Recording in progress.
So are we ready to start, Eva? Are we ready to start? No, one more minute.
We're good to go.
Okay. Let me just get ready. Okay, so we're calling the meeting to order at 6 o'clock. So Commissioner Henderson, do you want to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Ready? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Henderson. So let's go ahead and do roll call.
David Huboy,
Present.
Ken Henderson,
Present.
Roxanne Stevens,
Present.
Luke Corona.
Present.
Okay, so can we have verification of agenda postings?
I lost it.
The agenda for the June 23rd, 2022 Planning Commission meeting was posted on Friday, June 17th, 2022 at 4:40 p.m.
Okay, thank you. And can we go ahead and do an approval of the minutes? Do we need to have any discussion, changes, or can we just go forward with approval of the minutes?
I'll make the motion, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Somebody want a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so all in favor for approval of the minutes for February 24th, 2022 meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thanks, everyone. So we ready for public input? Should I call
I would have you read the information on the
The whole
public
thing?
input,
Okay.
please. Thank you.
Okay, so this is time for everyone in the audience to speak on an item not on the agenda and within subject matter just jurisdiction of the Planning Commission. Speaker cards are available in the lobby and are to be completed and given to the Secretary, the Development Services Director, before speaking. When the Secretary calls your name and address for the record and speak to the Commissioner, if you are joining us by Zoom, please click at the bottom of your screen to raise your hand. If you are joining using Zoom using a phone, please press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to mute or unmute. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes with a maximum of 30 minutes per subject. Please note the state law prohibits the Planning Commission from discussing or taking action on any item not on the agenda. So do we have any speaker cards, or do we have anybody who wants to be heard?
I have no speaker cards and there are no hands raised on the Zoom.
Okay, so we will move forward then to the agenda item number 1. So agenda item number 1 is tentative map 2021-4 conditional use permit 2022-14 planned use development PAD Investment Trust et al. The applicant is requesting a vesting tentative map and conditional use permit for a planned unit development approval to subdivide a 13.79 acres into 95 lots. The subdivision would create 92 new residential single-family detached lots, a parcel to be dedicated for public park space, and a parcel for stormwater treatment, and a remainder lot with an existing home that will remain. The The property has a general plan designation of low-density residential and is it within the low-density residential performance overlay zoning district. Site and architectural review is not part of the application. The project is located between North Chappelle Road and Highway 25 bypass north of Primavera Drive, further identified as San Benito County Assessor Parcel Number 051-23-00, CEQA Environmental Impact Report previously prepared. So can we get the staff report?
Yes, thank you, Chairperson. The staff report tonight will be presented by the City of Hollister's planning consultant from Kimley Horn, Mr. Tad Stern. So Tad, I'll go ahead and give you the floor.
Seconds ago, but Inga, can you confirm that you can hear me?
Yes, we can now.
Very good.
Actually, we are having some audio issues, Tad.
I'm going to try to log off and log back on.
That's significantly better. You're good now, I think.
I'm good now?
Yes.
Okay, my apologies. I've done about 20 of these in the last few months, and this is the first one I've had this kind of audio. So, okay, starting over. I know you have a lot on your agenda tonight, so let's just get right into this first item. This item's the Everglen Major Subdivision, APN 5123005. The applicant is Pad Investment Trust, and the location of this project, major subdivision, it's in between North Chapel Road and Highway 25. And the applicant's requesting a major subdivision, a tentative map, and a conditional use permit. The basics of this are that they're applying for a subdivision to create 92 single-family lots, a park dedication lot, stormwater treatment lot, and a remainder lot with an existing house. So it's 95 lots total on 13.79 acres. And this site, as you recall, is part of it's one of the residential areas of the Chapel Road Master Plan area. And this is the first major residential subdivision to occur within that master plan area. Here's a diagram of the general site location in between North Chapel Road and Highway 25. Next slide. And the local development pattern. We put this slide in just to show the context of the project. You can see it's the blue spot there that's in the middle of the Chapel Road Master Plan area. And there is development occurring in this part of the city, and that area that's on the inside of the curve of Highway 25 is the master plan area that has all been annexed, or most of it has been annexed into Hollister city limits. Next slide. And again, for context, this is the Chapel Road Master Plan. This was a plan that was adopted by the City Council. It sets just the basic framework for future development in this area. It was not a detailed plan. It did not have specific development standards or policies associated with it, but it did set out the basic framework that the city envisioned for this area of the city as it develops over time. So projects that come in need to reference this plan for consistency. Here's the site plan for the proposed subdivision. I know it's kind of hard to see at this scale and this kind of diagram, but this gives you the general lot layout, shows you where the internal roadways are. The park parcel is at the far right-hand side. In the lower left corner is the existing home, which is going to be the remainder parcel, and the stormwater treatment is just above that. Next slide, please. And the street and utility plan just provides more engineering detail on those particular items and the site layout. Okay, so in terms of the general plan, this project is designated low density residential and is zoned low density residential with the performance overlay, and site and architectural review is not part of this application. The project is consistent with the low density residential designation and the low density performance overlay zoning. Because it is in the performance overlay area, a conditional use permit, CUP, for a planned unit development is required. And when you do that, it does allow for some flexibility in the normal development standards. And so the applicant has come in with some alternative standards with some slight modifications to setbacks and lot size and roadway widths, and the roadways are going to be private roads. Like I said before, the subdivision is the first major residential subdivision in the Chapel Road master plan area, and the site has gone through annexation previously and been pre-zoned for low density residential. Lot sizes are 3,900 to 5,549 square feet, so they're a little bit smaller than standard lot sizes for low density residential. And this particular subdivision is also proposing a series of ADUs as part of the development, and with a minimum of 18. And if you recall, your own ordinance allows ADUs on these residential lots. Park dedication lot is good size. It's 1.34 acres. Next slide, please. And because of the project location, the subdivision required a bit of coordination on the engineering side and with the infrastructure planning and roadway improvements. The city adopted the San Felipe Road Corridor Study not long ago, which outlined a whole series of improvements, roundabouts, frontage improvements, et cetera, along San Felipe Road. And so what the city and staff really wanted to make sure of is when new projects are coming in, want to make sure that the requirements in that study get addressed either directly through construction of improvements or paying fair share improvements or fair share fees toward the improvements. And so we went through an exercise to develop a equitable funding mechanism for developing fair share. And those requirements are within the project's conditions of approval. Similarly, with other infrastructure systems, sewer, water, storm drainage, staff really wanted to make sure that when these projects come in, that we're not overtaxing those existing systems. And so there was an applicant-funded study to analyze the existing capacity within those systems, because the Chapel Road area was not in the city's larger master plans that had been adopted previously. So we went through that exercise and realized there was capacity and that it was okay for the projects to get constructed without overtaxing those systems. And again, all the conditions related to engineering are in the resolution. As I mentioned before, the internal roadways are private. There is a 46-foot right-of-way on the internal streets, and when there's parking on one side, it's 41.5 feet. And there's a requirement that they connect with other roadways as other subdivisions come in to the north and south. As mentioned previously, there's no further CEQA documentation that's necessary. There was a comprehensive EIR done several years ago for the entire annexation area, and staff went through and analyzed the mitigation measures and carried over some of those mitigation requirements into the resolution as well. And based on staff's review of the subdivision and working through with the applicant over the last several months to resolve issues as they came up, staff is recommending to adopt a resolution approving the major subdivision 2021-4, subject to the findings and conditions within the resolution, and also adopting a resolution approving conditional use permit 2022-1, subject to the findings and conditions of the second resolution. And with that, that concludes the staff report. I'm happy to answer questions about the subdivision. Between Eva and I, will do our best to get you the information you need.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I did have some
Okay,
Comments?
yeah, so thank you for that report. Commissioner Huboy, you have a few questions?
Yes, I do.
Please.
And I have been in discussion with the definition of density with Eva today, and it comes from my experience as an architect about 8 years ago working on the Walnut Creek subdivision where I was having trouble meeting the higher density. So I looked into the Ordinance 1038, Chapter 1702, general provisions of the zoning ordinance under the definition of density, and that is the number of dwellings per net acre of land unless otherwise stated for residential uses. So subsequently, I was able to subtract the area for roadway, private roads, etc., came up with an apartment complex design and kind of a mixed use. And then looking at the packet, starting yesterday, looking at it, just looking at the overall site plan there, ostensibly, I found it a little hard to accept that as being low density. Smaller lots, all kind of, in together there. I mean, it's a nice mixture of with the open space and public park. But what it boils down to, if you take, and thanks to Eva, she gave me the breakdown of, well, before I go into that, the net acre, what the real estate definition of a net acre is an acre which may be used for building of structures. For example, a builder buys 10 acres of raw land on which to build houses. 3 acres are used for streets, sidewalks, and other off-site improvements. The remaining 7 acres are the net acres of the 10-acre site. Now, unfortunately, the only definition we have of density is under definitions. It doesn't, in the zoning ordinance, it doesn't really carry that out specifically to define in detail what net acre is. However, working 8 years ago with Abraham, I subtracted the streets and got it to work. Looking at this, knowing now that I'm cognizant of what net acreage is, and density is based on net acreage. If you take the 13.79 acres of the total site area, and with help from Eva, it's like 3.32 acres of roadways. You're left with a net acreage of 10.47 times 8, which brings 84 units. And the proposal is for 93 units. So by the strict definition, and this is just kind of an executive summary of it, without really looking into it in detail of the takeoffs of the streets and the sidewalks, etc. But generally speaking, going with the definition of net acre, the allowable density would be in 84 units. So it's 93, it's like a 9-unit difference there. The general plan I know that we're working on encourages high density. And I also know it's initially difficult to predict net allowable density due to a variety of project types that are available. Which begs the question that it's in a performance overlay zone and that the whole area is a plan unit development. My question is there any flexibility, considering that it is a PUD and a performance overlay zone on the density, knowing that plan unit development is encouraged for flexibility to current zoning standards to encourage affordability and also innovative design, a plan unit development. The overlay zone also allows for developments to have some flexibility with the general plan development and site layout standards. So my question is, since it is a PUD and it's also a performance overlay zone, is there any flexibility on the density requirements?
It's a good question. And as you mentioned, we did speak on this earlier in doing the more detailed calculations between gross and net acreage. It is, I think our code doesn't, as you mentioned, speak clearly to what describes net density. Is it just the roads we talked about in this particular subdivision? There's a stormwater parcel, there's an open space parcel, there's also a parcel that they're creating with an existing house. These roads are also proposed to be private. So, perhaps if there was a clear definition in our code of net, is it only publicly maintained improvements? I think that there is potentially flexibility for the Planning Commission to consider, because the PUD does specifically call out, or the Performance Overlay Zoning District, that section of the code referencing that, does allow for flexibility and a reduction of lot size pretty significantly. I believe in some of the performance overlay zones, you can go even down to a 2,500 square foot lot, 3,000, 3,500 square foot lots.
Correct.
And if you do a net calculation of, for example, one unit on a 3,000 square foot lot or one unit on a 2,500 square foot lot, you're going to see a net density of approximately 14, 15, 17 units an acre, depending on that small lot size. So I'm not sure that it's particularly actually clear in our general plan or in our code. I know that the Performance Overlay Zoning District does specifically define an opportunity for flexibility in standards. It is not clear if it provides for an opportunity in the flexibility between the net and gross acreage calculation.
How would it be possible or forthcoming to have more clarity on what net acreage is, like an amendment or errata to our current zoning ordinance?
I think that would be an appropriate path forward, is to provide a definition in our code to propose an ordinance to make that a clear definition. And if we were doing a zoning amendment, that would be something that would come before the Planning Commission, or could come from Planning Commission with a recommendation of what should be included when calculating that net density.
Well, I strongly suggest that, but based on knowing that from the real estate definition of net density is that what we're proposing here is based on gross acreage, not net acreage. Would you say that is correct?
I would say that the 6.74 acres over the entire parcel is what's being calculated. Yes, a gross acreage calculation.
So something needs to be corrected here at either the zoning ordinance, a definition of density, or this needs to have more clarity on what the flexibility is in regarding to allowable units. All things considered, since this is the whole development is, the contextual development is a planned unit development. I'd like to have more clarity on that.
Okay.
And that concludes my questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Havoy. Any other questions, Commissioner Henderson, Commissioner Corona?
I have a question.
Question?
So the presenter mentioned that a conditional use permit is required for this property, and because of that, that provides flexibility. I just wonder if him or someone could expand on that, just for clarity.
Yes, so this goes to the Performance Overlay Zoning District. So that's something that's defined in, I believe, 1716 of our code. And it is we have a low density performance overlay zoning district, a medium density performance overlay zoning district, and a high density performance overlay zoning district. And the performance overlay zoning district is essentially a separate chapter that overlays over our standard R1, R3, R4 setbacks, lot coverage, unit type variations. So for example, in the R1 LPZ, typically in a normal R1 zoning district, things like multifamily are not permitted. Like, you could not propose a duplex on a standard R1 lot. You couldn't propose a triplex on a standard R1 lot. But in the performance overlay zoning district, which is what most, if not all, more newly annexed parcels are annexed into that overlay, because the goals of the overlay is to allow for a variation in lot types, a variation in standards. In the RPZ or the R1 LPZ, you could propose a triplex, and you could propose a duplex in addition to single family development. And that gives the flexibility in unit types and lot sizes, and potentially you might need townhomes would be a 0 lot line, right, if you had attached housing. So that's something that doesn't necessarily meet our standard R1 setbacks and codes and things like that. But the LPZ allows for an applicant to apply for this conditional use permit for a planned development, as this applicant has, to get those different standards to allow them to build a different product type in the goals of varying our housing in the city, as well as providing for more affordable types of units by not just doing your standard 6,000 square foot single family detached lots. But it does go back to Commissioner Huboy's point on, it isn't clear if the reduction in lot size is directly giving the commission and or the city council the authority to vary the density itself. That is the question that's not very clear.
All right, thank you for that. I had a follow-up question. Also, the ADUs, how do those get allocated? Is it looks like all the lots are pretty much the same, and do they just pick 18 of those to add a ADU in the back?
So the ADUs are going to be approved under separate permit, and we are currently following state law on those. So as far as the density concerned, under state law, ADUs do not count as a unit for purposes of calculating density. So to Commissioner Huboy's density, we're only looking at the 93 homes, the one existing and 92 proposed. But the ADUs, they will come either through the floor plan approvals on the master plans and or through separate application otherwise. But even though the developer is proposing 18, that doesn't prevent future homeowners from building additional ADUs under state law either.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Commissioner Corona, any questions? Okay, I don't have any questions at this time either, so should we open public comment? So it's open at 6:27.
Okay. Well, it looks like we do have a speaker online, Victor Gomez.
Hi, good afternoon, commissioners. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, excellent. Good to see everybody today. Honorable Chairperson Stevens and planning commissioners. This is Victor Gomez with Pinnacle Strategy. I'm here representing the applicant. After 7 years of work on this project, we're obviously very pleased to be finally here before you tonight. As you may be aware, in 2015, the Hollister City Council unanimously approved to allow this project to proceed on a 5-0 vote. Since then, the project applicant and other neighboring property owners have, along with the city, developed and approved a master plan for the Chapel Road area, including infrastructure improvements and parkland dedication. Along with the development of this much needed housing in our community, we will have dedicated funding for the expansion of Highway 25. We'll be dedicating funds for Hollister School District and the San Benito High School for infrastructure improvements for both of those school districts and hopefully an additional high school. Additionally, as mentioned, we will be dedicating funding for improvements to San Felipe Road and helping traffic circulation in North Hollister. With that said, I certainly want to thank city staff, Eva, and Kimberly Horn as well for their exceptional work and assistance on this project. And I'll just say this additionally for David Huboy's, excuse me, David Huboy's point. I certainly want to commend the General Plan Advisory Committee because they have been pursuing higher densities. And even though this is a low density with a higher unit count, I think that's exactly the vision of the city moving forward, pushing higher densities and, in an attempt to preserve as much open space as we can. this is exactly, I think, what the General Plan Advisory Committee and then eventually the City Council will be looking at. So anyway, with that said, we hope that we could count on your support tonight, and I'll stay online here in case I can answer any additional questions you may have. Thank you very much.
Does anybody have a question for Mr. Gomez?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Commissioner
Yeah,
Henderson.
Mr. Gomez. So, on the towards the side, the east side, there's the park area, and you said that was going to be taken over by the city, basically.
Yeah, that's correct. We will be dedicating funds and dedicating land for the improvements of that linear parkway. This is actually going to be I guess, a first of its kind in Hollister, and certainly something that I think the city and the community were looking for was a bit of a buffer between the curb there at Highway 25 and the residential units that will all eventually fill that entire area. So you are correct. That will also connect to a future tentative map application that you will see in the next couple of months for Chuck Davidson or Dahl Properties. And that will be a contiguous running park from the north end of Chapel Road all the way down to Santa Ana Road.
Okay, thank you. And is the park going to be behind a sound wall?
No, and that's again, I thank you, Kevin, for bringing that up. One of the other desires of the mayor and city council was limiting the amount of fencing and sound walls along the corridor. So, noise is certainly a factor that was taken into consideration, but really the setbacks will be limiting the noise impacts along that frontage. So you won't see what you see kind of down Highway 25, these large sound walls that'll be eliminated.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else have a question for Mr. Gomez? So, Mr. Gomez, I just wondered if you could just give us a little bit more information about the rest of the plan for the entire site, not just simply the site that we're considering today. Like, what will it look like eventually as plans move forward for future development around that rounded off corner of Highway 25?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Commissioner or Chairperson Stevens. That project will come before you, hopefully here in the next couple of months. We're just wrapping up a couple of things that we've been working with on regarding noise and mitigation there, and we're working closely with your staff. So that'll be very similar to what you're seeing here. You're going to see a continuity that you kind of saw in that master plan that Tad shared with you. On the north end there, you'll see the linear park start there and then eventually move down the curve down Highway 25 and then eventually connect to all of the parcels. Now, I do want to share with you, I only represent Dahl Properties, Chuck Davidson, and that wedge up at the top, and then my client here tonight. I am working with other property owners along that corridor too. For future development. And if you look at the master plan, that'll give you a really good idea of what it will look like. Now, with that said, there are some changes to the San Felipe Highway 25 component. I know that the General Plan Advisory Committee is looking at potentially high density zoning in that sort of southeast corner of San Felipe and Highway 25 for greater density. And then I think some commercial component there as well. So there are a bit of changes there. But all of it will look very consistent to what you're seeing here tonight.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gomez. Any other questions for the speaker? Any other speakers?
It looks like Augie Dent in the audience, who's the applicant, would like to speak as well.
Okay, thank you. Just a reminder, you have 3 minutes.
Oh, sure. I should be less than that.
Thank you.
I wanted to, first of all, thank you for hearing us tonight, and thanks to the staff for the great work that they have done to bring it this far. And I wanted to respond to some of Commissioner Huboy's questions in hopes that we could we'll be able to proceed tonight. As you know, Victor pointed out, and others, we've been working on this for 6 or 7 years, and it's been a lot of good work. And I think what we've got is largely due to the cooperation between staff and even public input that we've received over the years with respect to the master plan. That I think, as has been pointed out, we cooperated and prepared, and our project is absolutely in conformance with that master plan. And furthermore, we got a lot of input over time that what the city didn't want to see out here was a bunch of standard 6,000-foot lots that typically we would have seen in a low density setting. So it was in response to that we have the layout that we have here now. It was our understanding that the city's interest was to, rather than having the larger standard lots, to kind of build in some affordability, and we've attempted to accommodate that. And I'll go on to say that I think that it's my understanding that in the calculation of the density, that it is true that public streets are subtracted from the acreage, but since these are private streets, that they are not, they're not meant to be subtracted from the acreage upon which the density is calculated. So I think it is, it not only does it thematically and intentionally conform with what we understood that the city wanted, but I think even, mathematically the arithmetic works when you take into account that these are private streets and therefore should not be subtracted from the area that the density is calculated over. So I don't, if there are any questions, I'd be glad to try and answer them. I don't.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other speakers?
I have no other speakers.
Okay, so I'm going to close the public comment section at 6:36. And okay, so let me just check in. Anybody have any comments, questions, any further clarifications, discussions?
Just
Commissioner Boy?
generally speaking, private streets or public streets, when you are reaching for a lower density, then you can use your private streets. Certainly is a major factor in the calculation of this density. I certainly was allowed to subtract private streets for net acreage when I worked on a project 8 years ago. And I may have probably used, I don't know if I've used that subsequently, but that's just a comment. I think that the reason there is net acreage when you do subtract streets, it's the less streets, the more area of buildable land, and then the higher, more units that you can build on a site. So it does make sense that there's a ratio of private streets, and usually it's private streets and subdivisions, not public streets. Private streets being subtracted from the overall lot area equates to net acreage, in my view. And now that this has been brought out, now that I know about it, that's why I want to discuss it, because we need clarification on this.
Okay. So is that something that we can do tonight, though? Are we able to do that, or is this something that we need like more information on so that we can have like a more informed discussion?
And I also want to say that I know there's a lot of work that went into this, and I always I look at these projects a lot from the terms of the applicant, because I know they go through a lot of expense, a lot of time, hire engineers, work with staff, try to come up with a project that works for the community. When we looked at the Chapel Road PUD development as a whole, it has a lot of good features. This particular site that we're looking at tonight with the linear park and the smaller lot sizes, I am an advocate for flexibility on lot sizes. Sure. They equate to affordability by design.
Sure.
So I do want to appreciate the work that's been brought forth to us tonight in this Chapel Everglen vested tentative map. I appreciate it, but I also have to, bring this out because I am fairly familiar with the zoning ordinance, having, worked on several projects as an architect. So I thought it behooves me to bring this out into an open discussion. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so I just want to hear from the rest of the commissioners. Do we think that we need more information so they get more clarification? Is this a concern for any of the other commissioners, or should we move forward with a vote, some more questions, more discussion on another issue related to this project? So I want to hear from the other two commissioners. Commissioner Henderson?
Yeah, I was happy with the applicant's explanation of the density. I think he had a vision of, from the mayor and council before what they envisioned for that area, and I think what's been done is consistent with that vision. So I think they're trying to not kind of preserve open space while also providing some affordability. So I think it's consistent with that.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Henderson. Commissioner Corona, questions or comments?
I think the applicant's done an outstanding job in trying to conform every possible way to meet all standards. The mathematics you were talking about, it kind of makes a little bit more sense going with the private road versus the public road, how they're fitting it in. Your question, I was intrigued by it, but I think they answered it in a pretty good manner that I'm okay with going forward at this point tonight.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I have some similar concerns. I mean, I do think that although this complies with our current general plan, we are quickly moving to a new plan in about a year. And the direction that we're headed is to have more, multifamily units, to have more affordable housing. I think the other thing about this project, I remember when this came before us a couple of years ago, I believe, with some of the same people that are here, that there was some question about why not more commercial. Why is the commercial piece of it just confined to that one little spot at the end? And that's why I asked the question of Mr. Gomez about the overall project. So I still do have those same concerns tonight. So I don't have any questions or clarifications, but I do have some similar concerns about the density and about affordability and obviously some of the other things that are always concerns related to like roads. And I know Mr. Gomez talked about contributing to the expansion of Highway 25. I think that's great. I mean, I love the idea of the park. I do think that we need a little bit clarification about, without the sound wall, some of the safety concerns, but I think that will come later. But anyway, I think that there are some concerns with this project as well, although there are some really good features. So having said that, I'm going to ask my fellow commissioners, what do we want to do? Do we want to take a vote on this? Do we think we need more information to be able to move forward with the vote? So tell me, what would you like to do?
I'd like to have more information about the questions that I raised this evening and have more definitive clarity and answers regarding it
Okay.
before I can vote on it.
Okay.
Yes, so-
Commissioner Henderson, what do you think?
I'm not prepared to make a motion at this time.
Okay. Commissioner Corona?
I think based on what I'm reading, I would like to see a little bit more clarification. If possible, we can get it tonight. I would be okay with it and then move forward with a motion, but only if we can get a little bit more clarification on some of the other questions that the fellow commissioners have.
Okay, and I'm not really sure whether that's possible. Is that possible to get information tonight? I'm thinking,
I think it
Mike.
potentially warrants a further discussion on that topic specifically. But I don't know, city attorney, if it would be appropriate to have a motion to continue to a later date, and then we can perhaps as staff work on an item with more information on that density issue.
Yeah, I agree. It wouldn't be really appropriate to discuss the municipal code amendment tonight because that's not on the agenda, but can certainly request that staff do that and bring it back.
I personally, I cannot support a project knowing that that it does not conform to the zoning ordinance. I just can't do that now that I'm totally aware of it.
Okay, so it sounds like we, at least some, maybe the majority of us on the commission would like a little bit more time. Is this something that we can postpone for another meeting?
I
And if
know from
so,
the, for
how do
the,
we move forward doing that?
I'm sorry
Go
to
ahead.
jump in there, but knowing that they've spent a long time on this project, I would certainly be amenable to a special meeting on this, to speed it up, and then to address and get clarity on the issue of density.
I just wanted to clarify my statement that I wasn't prepared to make a motion at that instant, but I'm open to hearing any motions or possibly making one, but I'm not sure which way you're leaning as far as would you entertain a motion to approve at this point?
So I'm okay with moving forward with what the majority of us want to do. What I'm hearing, however, is that we need a little more information for at least two of us to be able to support this project. And so without that information, it's going to feel as if we're making a vote without all the information that could possibly help in moving this project forward.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, I would rather err on the side of let's have more time, more information. I agree with Commissioner Huboy. A special meeting to entertain this, I think, would be okay if the other commissioners are okay with that. I would be okay with that. So that's a little bit more clarification about my comment. So are the rest of you okay with that?
Chairperson Stevens, can you be more specific on the type of information that you guys are looking for?
So if there is a possibility of having higher density units on this property, on this in this zoning area, what would that look like, and what would the calculation be? So I think there's some question about how do you, and I'm going to ask Commissioner Huboy to make sure that what I'm saying kind of reflects what he was asking earlier. But I think there's question about the calculation to low density, and then there was some specifics about the road, the private road, public road, et cetera. So I think we want a little bit more clarification that. And also I think for me, this is my own opinion, maybe your concern is a little bit different. It's about what are the opportunities that we might be missing if we don't know for sure what is possible in this project. And if the density calculation is limiting those possibilities, then we want to have that information, or at least I want to have that information in order to move forward. So that's my concern. And I'll check with Commissioner Huboy. Do you have similar concerns? Do you have something different? And do you want to explain what specific information you'd like?
Well, I'd like to focus in on a definition in the zoning ordinance. And it may be that this is an outdated definition. It may be that it's really not that applicable anymore. And knowing that we're moving towards higher densities with the new general plan, hopefully that is going to be coming around soon. That'd be a question I had later in the evening. But I'd like to see how we can look at these projects in a practical manner and look at whatever flexibility that can be brought to the subject with the current definition of density, knowing that it may not, it's something that we've more than likely approved projects based on gross density in the past. I'd like to look at that. What have we approved in the past? But the issue is that based on what it is currently on the books, that's what we're I see as our jobs are to look at zoning ordinance, look at general plan, look at conformity to general plan and the zoning ordinance. And if there's an issue, then I have to bring it out, because we either have to deal with that, sunset it somehow, amend the zoning ordinance. Maybe we can see how, based on what we've approved in the past, it may be that there's a way to sunset that definition and change it without going through a long process. That I don't know. There's maybe some legalities with our new council. By the way, welcome on board.
Thank you.
So, I mean, goes beyond a little bit beyond my expertise, but knowing what I know, and my comfort level is that I can't approve something if there's what I think there is a violation of what's on the existing books. You know, I just can't do that.
Sure. Commissioner Henderson, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I just trying to get clarification from Mr. Huboy. So do you believe there should be more units or less units? In relation to the zoning?
If just looking at it without being mindful of low density or high density residential, looking at it as a project, my take is that I would more than likely approve it, definitely, if knowing that it conforms to low density, But that's what the overlay zone is. It's a low density overlay zone. I would approve that, but the numbers just don't add up. That's the problem. It's like I said before. I'll repeat it. You take the lot area minus 2.37 acres for streets, you're left with 6.96 times 12 is 84 units allowable, and proposing 93. I was hoping that there would be some flexibility because it is a performance overlay zone and a planned unit development, but I wasn't able to get clarity on that.
Yeah, I think that seems like what we're understanding of seeing. I'm not sure if the most appropriate way is like a study session to discuss that. But I do see Tad Stern's hand raised if we'd like to.
Okay.
And I didn't want to
insight
spring
as
this in on everyone tonight without trying to get some discussion with staff.
Sure.
And I did my best, but being as the busy architect that I am, I reserved yesterday afternoon and all of today to go through the packet.
Sure. Yeah, and I think it's important to have all the information, and it sounds like maybe our concerns are a little bit different. However, I think the added additional information either way is important to clarify. So anyway, so that's just my comment. Commissioner Henderson, did you want to make another comment or question? Okay.
Yeah, sure. I'm just trying to understand the numbers here. So I'm just reading the staff report directly under where it says general plan consistency. It says the housing density for the low density R1 zoning district is 1 to 8 dwelling units per acre, with an overall density of 6.74 DU per acre. The development would meet both the standard R1 and the residential overlay district. So my question to Commissioner Huboy is, the staff calculation is 6.74 DU. So what is your calculation in DU?
Well, because the gross allowable density is 13.7 times 8, which equates to, I believe, 110.32. So what they're proposing is 93. So I think 93 based and I don't have my calculator.
Well,
so I'm wondering.
I'm trying to get your calculation of the DU because the staff says it's 6.74, but I haven't heard what your calculation of DU is.
So Commissioner Henderson, can I just interject just quickly? I think that because this is so technical and the calculation is really the concern, that I do think that these questions or the difference of understanding is what the issue is, and that's why we need clarification. So I'm thinking that rather than spending this time when we have other items on the agenda trying to figure something, the minutia of the calculation, it may be worth putting it off so then we can have a special meeting and then we can get to that
Right.
level of detail so that we can clarify. Because I think Commissioner Henderson's point is important, but I think it also speaks to Commissioner Huboy's concerns, is that there is misunderstanding, or there's maybe different understandings. And so can we clarify that, or can we at least as a body come to some general understanding about what we're talking about before we move forward on this, rather than spending this time when we have other items, we have the public here, spending maybe a special session where we just focus on that level of detail, and maybe we can have some of that information presented to us prior to that meeting. That's where I think I would be more comfortable. And of course, I want to defer to the rest of you and find out what your thinking is. Are you okay with doing that? Because I hate using this public time when we have other items on that level of detail and minutia. I think we should save that for maybe a special session, or save it for a time where we can get more information from staff.
I support that, Madam Chair.
Okay. What, Commissioner Corona, Commissioner Henderson, what do you think about that?
I would also support it, but I would like to see it, given the time that's been put into it by the applicant, we try and get that special meeting
As soon as
possible.
Sure.
To get this ball
Absolutely.
definitely rolling.
I think we would all be in agreement with that.
Yes.
Okay, so with that.
Well,
what do you
yeah,
think? Go
one
ahead.
second,
Go
sorry.
ahead, Commissioner Henderson.
Let's see. So I guess the issue I have is we're talking just about a fundamental definition, and we're going to be looking at more agenda items tonight where they'll probably be talking about density. So if we have a problem with this agenda item because of a technical definition issue, I mean, it feels like we need to cancel the whole meeting and until we can, if we, don't trust the staff calculation and the work that's been done by the applicant. So I'm not sure this is the appropriate reason to stop a project because of a lack of understanding of definitions. And I personally know the staff works, they have their definitions, and I trust what I'm reading and what's been presented. I'm comfortable with the explanation from the applicant. So, yeah, I would motion to approve, but it sounds like there's not going to be support of three of us. So that's my comment.
Okay, so I thank you. Thank you. It's important for us to understand your point of view on this. And so what I'm thinking is, first of all, I think that we do have to look at each item individually. So I certainly don't want to make a decision about this item based on what could possibly come up in other items. So let's just look at each item individually. And then I think that I still have the opinion that I think we need some clarification and we need more information. Commissioner Huboy, have you changed your opinion on that?
No, it's pretty clear to me that based on what density is in our current zoning ordinance, this does not conform to it.
Okay. And Commissioner Corona, are you still okay with moving forward? Or are you now, do you have a difference of opinion now that you've heard from some of the other comments that have been made?
Just to clarify, I'm in full support of moving to a special meeting, but at the same time, given what staff's put forward, given what the applicants put forward, I am actually comfortable with moving forward with a motion to approve if staff is willing to consider.
Okay. So I'm okay with doing either one. I think we need more time. At least there's two commissioners who would like more time. And if somebody wants to make a motion to move forward, we can do that. So, and with the understanding that there's two of us that would really feel like we need at least a little bit more time. So
So to summarize, I think we're saying that we either can have a special meeting to get these questions clarified, or the option is, if you want to make a motion,
Make a motion.
go ahead and make a motion.
If I could, just to clarify, are we looking at having a special meeting just for that particular concern, or are we going to go through the entire project again? Or can we approve everything but the concern at this moment?
I don't think we need to go through the entire project. I think we just need to look at what the clarification on what density is, and how projects, and not only this projects, but projects in the future would need to or not need to conform to our current definition of density.
Okay.
I mean, we know, certainly we don't have to go through the project again. We're just talking about the question I raised about conformity to the definition of density.
So I think we just have to make a decision. So let's either we have somebody make a motion, or we make a decision to move forward with allowing more time so that we get more information and schedule a special meeting to hear this item.
Madam Chair, if I could, I'd like to make a motion.
Sure.
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the resolution approving tentative map number 2021-4, subject to the findings and conditions contained in the draft resolution. Also, that we adopt the resolution approving conditional use permit 2022-1 for planned unit development, subject to the findings and conditions contained in the draft resolution.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table.
I would like to second.
Okay, so should we do a roll call vote? Okay.
Commissioner Huboy,
Nay.
Commissioner Henderson,
Yes.
Chairperson Stevens,
Nay.
Commissioner Corona.
Yes.
The motion fails at the tie vote, so another motion could be made by the commission.
Okay, so would somebody like to make another motion, or do we want to just leave that motion as is?
Maybe City Attorney, you could just make a clarification on what it means that we had a 2-2 vote and where we go from here.
Yeah, as Eva mentioned, the vote fails, and if you did want to bring the item back, you would want to make a second, someone would want to make a motion, and then a second, and then a roll call to bring it back.
So just to clarify, we would make a motion for a special meeting then?
Yes, however, I don't, I can't say when that special meeting would occur, like we wouldn't be able to do that at the moment.
And I think that we have to put the item back on because it's failed, so we'd have to put it back on in order to be able to have a special meeting, because the item has already been decided. Is that right? Yes or no?
Well, you can make a motion to bring the item back with certain clarifications, and it would be really helpful to staff to know what those clarifications are.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Sure.
Okay.
Does that make sense to the others?
I'll make a
Okay.
motion, Madam Chair.
Please.
I'd like to make a motion that we have this item returned with more clarification regarding conformance to the current density definition in the zoning ordinance.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Do I have a second?
And that includes more information regarding what net density really is, and regarding to some of the components of the site, such as the private streets.
Okay, so is that additional comment that he made okay for the motion, or should I have him restate the motion?
I have that Commissioner Huboy is making a motion to return the item to a future agenda with more information on the density calculation and specifically on what it means to calculate net density.
And in relation to the current definition of density.
In relation to the current definition of density. I have stated that for the record, and I will get it into the minutes as I just stated it,
Okay.
if that is your motion.
You know,
Okay.
rules are rules, regardless if we use them or not. If they're on the books, we have to make sure that what we approve conforms to the current,
Sure.
current regulations.
Yeah, I think we just need to get a second and then move forward with this vote. So
I'm
let's
sorry
just
to
get
be
a
a sticker
second.
on that, but that's the
fine.
way I roll.
Okay. I'll go ahead and second the motion. So can we have a vote on that? Roll
Can we have-
call vote.
Can we discuss the motion?
Sure.
Okay, I just wanted, I think I'm okay with the motion, but I think, Mr. Huboy, you should be prepared to come back with your calculation of the DU, because you objected to the staff calculation.
I did the calculation based on working with Eva, and I came up with a calculation of allowable low density as 84 units.
Okay, but that's
So-
not, but the calculation that staff provided us is 6.74 DU. I haven't heard what your number DU is. You're giving a different unit. I don't understand the unit that you're.
I took the
You're giving-
overall site area minus the area of private streets, came with a net acreage of 6.96 times 12, comes up to 84.
So
So
commissioners, I'm
84, so
gonna,
your number is 80, so the staff's number is
Commissioner Henderson.
6.74 DU, and your number is 84 DU,
No,
is that
I'm
correct?
totally 84 is the total allowable
What is your
dwelling
DU?
units.
What is your
What do you-
DU?
what is
so
your
Commissioner
definition of
Henderson
DU?
and Commissioner Huboy, can I please get your attention? So I'm gonna ask that we table this discussion. Commissioner Henderson, I'm gonna just ask that we each individually hold ourselves responsible for whatever questions, concerns, information we want to bring forward. So if you have that question, then I say bring that forward. Commissioner Huboy, please come forward with whatever questions, concerns, information that you have when we have our special meeting, if in fact it does occur. I think we have to be accountable to ourselves. So let's just move forward with that, and then I'm going to ask again if there's any questions or discussion, and then move forward with the roll call vote. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to ask for a roll call vote.
Did we have a second?
Yes, I second it.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Huboy,
Yes.
Commissioner Henderson,
Yes.
Chairperson Stevens,
Yes.
Commissioner Corona.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Motion carries 4-0. We will
Okay.
return with the item.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we're going to move on.
I'm
to-
sorry to interrupt. We had one of the applicants request that the commission consider moving their item up to next, which is item number 5 on the agenda.
Oh,
Philippa 9.
That's the one
Site
that's
mortgage.
requesting a continuance. I think we're going to,
So
okay.
they've asked to be moved up,
Um,
if that's okay with the
I
commission.
think that's okay. Anybody have any objections to that?
It's okay with me.
Okay,
That's
let's
fine.
move that forward, because that is a continuance.
Okay, just give me 1 second to rearrange here. We're skipping to 5.
Okay, so we're moving on to item number 5 on the agenda, Site and Architectural Review 2021-5, Philip 9 LLC. The applicant is requesting site and architectural review approval for the construction of a 337,710 square foot greenhouse building for cannabis cultivation, distribution, and manufacturing in the North Gate zoning district. The project is located at 773 San Felipe Road, east of San Felipe Road, north of Chappelle Road, further identified as San Benito County Assessor Parcel number 051-100-035 and 051-100-306 and 051-100-46 CEQA mitigated negative declaration. Can we hear the staff report?
Yes, thank you, Chairperson. So this again is a site and architectural review 2021-5. This is a request to approve for the construction of a 337,000 square foot cannabis greenhouse building on a 12.22 acre parcel at 773 San Felipe Road in the North Gateway zoning district. The project applicants currently hold entitlements for a minor subdivision site and architectural review, which were previously adopted by the Planning Commission, that this project would propose to replace. This project also includes a lot line adjustment to create this 12.22 acre parcel that does not currently exist. The project site shares its access, as you can see on the left side of your screen, over to San Felipe Road through a parcel that is shared. So they do not have direct frontage on San Felipe Road. One of the concerns that staff has had and been working with the applicant on this project is that they are proposing, as you can see, 2 above ground stormwater detention and retention facilities. The City of Hollister City Council in 2019 adopted Ordinance 1177, which repealed and replaced our stormwater management section 17.16.140 of the Hollister Municipal Code, which requires that whenever feasible, every effort to design, construct, and install underground stormwater infiltration basins for all new and redevelopment projects, instead of utilizing open retention or detention ponds, they shall be undergrounded, essentially is what this says. So however, it does provide for that if it's infeasible for the development to meet this undergrounding requirement, that the applicant's engineer can provide a letter explaining the reason for the infeasibility for consideration. The project as it's proposed does not meet this requirement. We have been working with the applicant to either work with them to determine that infeasibility and or to provide plans that preliminarily showcase that the stormwater facilities can work on this site in an underground way. And we did receive just the other day a proposal from the applicant to actually underground these and revise the plan set. So at this time, staff is recommending a continuance of the item to a date certain of August 25th, 2022, which is the next Planning Commission meeting. As you're aware, we are dark in July. And this will give staff and the applicant time to fully revise the set of plans and then allow staff time to review those plans to make sure that they're in conformance with the zoning code for stormwater management facilities.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions for staff? So I think we still need to do a public comment,
Yes.
right? So let's go ahead and start public comment at 7:12. Any speaker cards or anyone on Zoom?
I have no one on Zoom, but I do have a speaker card for Gary Coates.
Mr. Coates?
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. Gary Coates here on behalf of the Felipe 9 project. First and foremost, thank you all for taking us out of the order to consider us, and apologize to those folks that are here before us. So thank you for that. I'll make this very quickly. We're concurrent with your staff to recommend a continuance for the project to resolve these issues. I think we've completed our studies. We'll have all of the supporting information due this next week that'll be submitted to staff. I noticed earlier in your meeting you were talking about a special meeting. We would love to have the opportunity to be involved in a special meeting versus a 60-day delay, if it is possible. If it's possible, I know July is your month off, so we'll respect that. If you do decide to do it during that month, we'd love to be on that agenda. If not, at the latest, maybe look at the first week in August. The first Thursday would then at least get us 4 weeks ahead of that late date. luckily, this project's been on at the staff level for quite a bit, and it was just this one item, as Eva has said, and we've concurred to go and design that, and our engineers have already finished that work on our side. So, thank you. We would support staff's recommendation for a continuation and request a special meeting if you have that, for us to be able to attend that meeting and have this for consideration at that time, Madam Chair. I'll answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Coates. Any questions for the, for Mr. Coates?
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other speaker cards or questions online?
I have no other speakers.
Okay, so I'm going to close the public comment section at 7:14. Okay, so any discussion, questions, further comments for staff from my fellow commissioners? Okay, so can I let me just ask a quick question, just to respond to Mr. Coates' question about the special meeting. Do we have to make a vote about including them in a special meeting, or is that something that staff can later determine based on the amount of time that you'll need to be prepared for us to hear this item?
I don't know that you need to vote to put it on the special meeting. I think that staff will be working on potentially a special meeting for the previous item. And if this item can work out to be on that agenda, if it's the consensus of the commission to have that be an option, I don't know. Well, if we're recommending for a continuance to a specific date, maybe it would be better to just continue to not a date certain. That way staff can renotice for the appropriate meeting as soon as possible.
Okay, so thanks for that clarification. So then at this point, we'll just be, I'm thinking we just are considering if somebody wants to make a motion about continuing this item and having us vote on that. So does somebody want to make a motion about that?
To a date uncertain at this point?
I would suggest a date uncertain. I will note that we will have to republish the item if it is not for a date certain, so that could push their completion to faster, if that makes any sense, because we have to do newspaper notification, and it's about 3 weeks in advance of the meeting. So staff will do our best if we do end up are able to schedule a meeting, but we'll schedule it for as soon as it's possible.
But that's not something we need to resolve today. It's just you will
It would be a date
determine if
uncertain.
there's enough time, then it will be added. If not, then it just goes on a regular agenda, a regular meeting. Okay. So again, I'm asking my fellow commissioners for a motion if somebody would like to make a motion on this.
I'll make a motion to continue this item to a date uncertain as soon as possible.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Do we need a roll call vote on this one? Okay, let's do a roll call vote.
Commissioner Huboy,
Yes.
Commissioner Henderson,
Yes.
Chairperson Stevens,
Yes.
Commissioner Corona.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. You're welcome. Okay, so we're going to go back. Oh, let me just check in with you. Do we need to take a quick break, or should we just proceed forward? We're like a little more than an hour in. Should we just proceed with the next item? Anybody need a break? Okay, let's move forward. Item number 2 on the agenda.
Number 5 getting moved up ahead of my thing in number 4.
So I'm gonna not respond to that. If you want to ask for time at the podium, you are welcome to do that. I apologize for that inconvenience. I'm gonna move forward with agenda item number 2, tentative map 2021-3, conditional use permit 2021-10 for a plant unit development. Stonebridge Homes, Hugh Walker. The applicant is requesting a vesting tentative map and conditional use permit for a planned unit development approval to subdivide 9.3 acres into 101 lots. The subdivision would create 100 new residential single-family detached lots and a parcel for stormwater treatment. The property has a general plan designation of medium-density residential and is within the medium-density residential performance overlay zoning district. Site and architectural review is not part of the application. The project is located at 1070 Buena Vista Road, north of Buena Vista Road, west of West Side Boulevard, and south of West Side Road, further identified as San Bernardino County Assessor Parcel Number 019-120-005, CEQA mitigated negative declaration previously prepared. Okay, so can we hear a staff report on this item, please?
Yes, thank you, Chairperson Stevens. Item number 2 for the Woodle subdivision will also be presented by our consulting planner from Kimley Horn, Mr. Tad Stern. So I'll go ahead and turn this back over to you, Tad.
Thank you, Eva. Chair Stevens, Commissioners, Tad Stern once again. This project, and thank you for the summary, this project before you, this is a public hearing on the Woodle major subdivision. Applicant is Stonebridge Homes. Next slide, please. So this, unlike the other project, this project is located, is fronting Buena Vista Road in the Buena Vista area near West Side Boulevard. The requested approvals include it's a major subdivision due to its size, a vesting tentative map, and a conditional use permit, again associated with the performance overlay. A subdivision proposes to create 100 single-family lots at medium density, plus a stormwater treatment parcel on the 9.33 acres. And this site was also previously annexed into the city with that annexation occurring in 2020. And here's a general location. Buena Vista, the site's a long rectangular site. It goes all the way from Buena Vista all the way to West Side Road. And again, just for planning context and the development pattern context, this is one of the other areas of the city that's experiencing development over time and planned as well. Existing conditions, this is the existing parcel. It shows the farm buildings and existing home that's on the left side of the lot fronting Buena Vista Road. There was a historic resource study prepared as a condition of the annexation, and the applicant did complete that, and that home was found to not have historic integrity. Here's a lot layout for the subdivision. There are no lots fronting Buena Vista. You have to get into the subdivision in order to get the lot frontage. There are 2 connections out to West Side Road. My understanding is that those will not provide near-term connectivity pending full improvements to West Side Road. Next slide, please. Again, here's the subdivision layout and parcel A. That is the bioretention parcel up in the upper right-hand corner. And these streets are also private, and so they are more narrow than the standard street widths for the city. Okay. Again, this is the medium density residential project. Through staff's review and analysis, we did find that it's consistent with the medium density residential designation in the general plan and the zoning for medium density with the performance overlay. The 11.2 acres DU net density, that net word is probably going to stand out to us now after the last item, right? So the net density in this case was calculated by taking the gross acreage, but subtracting the public road dedications. not private road dedications, but the public road dedications. So maybe we can go back to that a little bit later. But that's consistent. The 11.2 is consistent with the medium density zoning. Again, like the last project, this is a conditional use permit for planned unit development. There are some requests for flexibility in the standards on lot size and setbacks, and again, the road widths. Subdivision is implementing the prior annexation of the property. So this is land that has gone through the process and is understood to be designated, for future residential development. The lot sizes range from 2,600 to 3,430 square feet, and we do have that private stormwater detention basin. That's a fairly large, 15,000 square feet. So the subdivision is consistent with planned traffic calming measures along Buena Vista Road, and being consistent, that's not going to interfere with any of those planned calming measures. Primary access is from Buena Vista Road, and again, there's no lots fronting Buena Vista. The applicant is going to pay a park dedication fee because there's no parks on site or public open space on site, so they will be required to pay the in lieu fee. And as I said, all the internal roads are private, and that stormwater detention basin would be privately maintained, but access to the city to inspect. City-county maintenance agreement is required for West Side Road because we are going to be at the city limit line, and that is a county road, and that's something that is in the conditions of approval. As I said before, the existing residents on site, to remove that does not have an impact under CEQA or California environmental law, because it was found by a qualified historian to not to be a significantly historic structure. And the applicant and the city did complete their CEQA documentation with the mitigated neg deck, and there are mitigation measures that are attached to this project for the different phases of development. Next slide. Eva, I didn't know if you wanted to say something about the clarification of the conditions.
Yes, sure. So in the draft resolution, and you might have noticed there was some highlighting. It looks like a version got saved that was not correct. So staff is recommending the removal of 3 of the conditions in the draft resolution for the tentative map. Condition number 67 is with regard to setbacks from specific buildings, trees, bushes. This is something that's covered by our city standards, so we don't feel that it's necessary to have a specific condition on this project. Condition 69 is regarding Caltrans permitting within Caltrans right-of-ways. There are no Caltrans right-of-ways near this project, so this condition doesn't actually have any applications for the tentative map that's being proposed. And then condition 79 is with regard to secondary access and the fire code. This is not relevant because of the fire sprinklering requirements within each individual house, and that's part of the fire code. So this secondary access is not applicable to this particular project. They do have secondary access to West Side Road anyway, but this particular condition is not applicable because it'll meet the fire code in other ways. So we are recommending the removal of these 3 conditions.
And the applicant has been made aware
Yes.
of those changes. So based on staff's review of the proposal, we do recommend adoption of the resolution approving tentative map 2021-3, subject to the findings and conditions within the draft resolution, with the removal of conditions 67, 69, and 79 as discussed, and adoption of resolution approving conditional use permit 2021-10, subject to the findings and conditions in the draft second resolution. And that again concludes staff report, and we are available for questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you for that report. Any questions from my fellow commissioners?
Well, other than, I've been beating this, what they call it, a dead horse, other than the density. Is this subject to a homeowners association on this?
They
Project.
will have private facilities, so they will likely have some kind of codes, covenants, and restrictions, and/or homeowners association for the maintenance of those.
Likely would. Okay.
Yeah, there will be an HOA.
Okay. Good.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the other two commissioners, Commissioner Corona, Commissioner Henderson? Okay, not hearing any, so let's move forward to public comment. So let's start the public comment section at 7:29. Any speakers?
I have no speaker cards and no hands raised.
Okay. Okay, with no speakers from the public, I'm gonna end public comment at 7:29. And check in again with fellow commissioners. How would you like to proceed on this item? Any other question, discussion, clarification, comments?
Madam Chair. So we look under site data on the, I guess it's the cover sheet. And the breakdown has private streets as 2.37 acres, lot area 9.33. You subtract the 2.37 from 9.33, you get 6.96 times 12 with the maximum allowable dwelling units per acre, come up with 84 units. So I have the same issue with this project as this item as I did with item number 1. So unless my fellow commissioners see it otherwise, I would like to make a motion to include this item along with item number 1 for that special meeting that we originally adopted.
So, for clarification, so you have similar concerns about the way that the density ratios are being calculated?
Yes.
Okay. Comments from the other commissioners?
I'll withhold making a motion until I hear from my other commissioners.
Okay, so I just wanted clarification, Mr. Huboy. So what is the gross acreage that you're using?
It's 9.33.
9.33. Okay.
Right. And if you multiply times 12, you come up with, I think, 112. They're proposing 100. Going back to the first one, the 6.7 that you were asking about, that's based on the number of units being proposed per number of acres. I just wanted to answer that question from your previous question, but so they're allowed from gross acreage 112 units. They're providing 100, but as I see it from net, the allowable under net acreage is 84.
Okay, so so I got that you're calculating gross acreage is 9.33. So 100 units divided by 9.33 acres, that comes out to 10.72 dwelling units per acre. So that's what staff report says.
Right.
And staff report also says there's a net. They calculate a dwelling units per acre net. They calculate 11.2.
But that was without subtracting as Todd said in his staff report,
Okay.
that 11.2 did not include deducting the area of private streets.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm
Okay.
going to check in with Commissioner Corona to see if he has any questions while you continue to calculate, Commissioner Henderson, and then I'll come back to you.
Okay.
So Commissioner Corona, do you have any questions or comments that you'd like to make?
No questions.
Thank you. So Commissioner Henderson, do you have any further comments or questions?
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand what acreage you're using. what acreage you're using. Like the gross acreage is 9.33.
Mhm.
We got that.
Right.
So what is your acreage that you're saying for net?
I'm using 6.96.
Okay, so 100 divided by 6.96. That's comes out to 14.36 units per acreage, which would go over the 12. The 8
Yeah.
doesn't meet the
Well,
8 to
yeah,
12 range.
That's
so
another way.
that's your
That's
issue.
another way of doing
Yeah.
the calculations, Kevin. That's
Yeah,
true.
I just
Okay.
so I just from the last
Yeah.
conversation I
You
understand
did,
now
you're
how
doing
you
the
get
math
to
a
your
little
number.
bit differently than I do.
Right,
yeah,
right.
But I
So-
see. That's certainly, yeah, that is
Okay.
correct.
So
Okay,
you have
so
a-
gentlemen,
you-
we're kind of back to where we were before. So let's just, it's clear that there is a difference in the way that individuals on this commission are understanding the calculation. And I think that that's probably due to not enough information about how to make that calculation. So it sounds like we're back again with this issue. So I'm going to just ask that rather than us spending a lot of time with the back and forth on something that obviously is based on difference of understanding, that we just make a decision about how we want to move forward with this. And for the audience, please make sure that you fill out a speaker card. If you have a question, just do it really quick, because I just really want to make sure that we keep order in these chambers. I'm going to go back to my fellow commissioners. How would you like to proceed? Do we have further discussion, questions? Does anybody want to make a motion?
I just want to comment that I think Commissioner Hugo and I are on the same page now as far as how things are calculated.
Right.
So the fundamental issue that Mr. Hugo has is just how they're calculating their net acreage.
That's true. That's true.
And so
That's
when
true,
you take
Kevin.
that acreage and you divide the units by that number, you
Mhm.
come up with this dwelling units per acre.
Or you take the net
And-
acreage and multiply it times the allowable units per acre, and you come up with the
Yeah.
same. It
Different.
doesn't compute
Right.
to what they're.
So
Yeah. So that's the issue.
So, yeah, exactly. So this is, like I said, was said before with the first item, this is this kind of a fundamental problem that we have now, because we can't talk about anything now because they all have the same calculation in it.
Right,
So-
and again, I mean, I think we can always talk about it. That's why we're here. We're going to talk about each item individually, and we need to just decide how we want to move forward. We have to propose an action for each item.
Mhm.
So that's what we need to decide. So we can make a motion to approve or not approve one of the resolutions. We can make a motion to allow for more time. I mean, we can do whatever we'd like to do, but we do have to consider each item individually. So I'm going to ask again, how do my fellow commissioners want to proceed?
Did we hear?
Chairperson Stevens, if
public?
I may.
I'm sorry.
If I may.
Say that again?
I said if I may.
Yes.
Thank you. I just wanted to let you know, I do know that the public hearing has been opened and closed, but I did want to let you know that I received a speaker card from Mr. Hugh Walker, who is the applicant, but that would require reopening the public hearing.
There was also a hand in the audience as well, so I think it would be good to reopen the public hearing.
Okay, so, let's go ahead and we're going to reopen the public hearing portion of this, and I'm going to ask that we maybe try to limit the comments to be as concise as possible, because we are deviating from some of our procedures. So I would like us to just be really concise so that we can move forward, because as stated earlier, there is some concerns about like how much time we're spending and items being moved around. So let's just try to do that as quickly as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and reopen public comment section 738.
Okay. Hugh Walker?
Hi, Commissioners. I am Hugh Walker with Stonebridge Homes, Vice President of Stonebridge Homes. This is a little bit like the first one that you looked at different in that all of our lots are relatively consistent. We are medium density and meet the medium density. And Commissioner Huboy is correct. We are taking the entire gross acres and then dividing it by the allowable medium density, coming up with 100 lots to fit. That is all correct. But as stated earlier with the performance overlay, that is how they're calculating it. I mean, we've gone through 7-8 months of back and forth with all of the engineers and staff and whatnot. And if there was an issue, I would have thought that would have come up way earlier, and we could have adjusted something or done something different. So they are private streets, and we are including the private streets in the gross acres, and HOA will be maintaining them and have ownership over those. So we do include those in the overall calculation, which is how we come up with 100 lots on that subdivision. But
Okay.
all the lots are within the medium density. They don't fluctuate by 2,000 or 3,000 square feet. They fluctuate only by, maybe 50 to 75 or something, and those are the corner lots. So I guess the determination really needs to be here is how are you calculating your density, which is what we've been talking about, including or excluding the private streets.
Okay, so I'm just gonna ask you to just make your comment, and then rather than questions to the commission, because I
Sorry.
did do reopen this,
Okay,
and so I just want you to make your comment, and I think that we can have further discussion about that.
okay.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other speaker cards on this item? And then I really want to close public comment section so we can continue with this item.
I have no other speakers.
Okay, so I'm going to close the public comment section at 7:40, and then come back to my fellow commissioners. Do you have any questions, clarifications, further comment, and how would you like to proceed?
Well, just for consistency, I don't have issue with the staff calculation or the explanation. So for consistency, I would definitely entertain a motion to approve.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Huboy, do you want to make a comment? Do you have a question?
I think I've pretty well explained my comments on so far.
Okay. Commissioner Corona? Okay. So would somebody like to make a motion? Or how would you like to proceed?
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
I'd like to move that we adopt a resolution approving tentative, looks like it just says tentative here on the screen. Tentative.
Oh, a tentative map, sorry,
Okay.
tentative map 2021
Adopt a resolution approving tentative map 2021-3, subject to the findings and conditions within the draft resolution, with the removal of conditions 67, 69, and 79 as discussed. Also adopt a resolution, or do I need two motions or just
I
one?
think we do one at
It
a
would
time.
be better to do one at a time.
One at a time, okay. All right, so that's the first motion.
Okay. Second. If you have a second on that.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? No? Okay, so I think
Roll call.
we can proceed with the roll call vote.
Commissioner Huboy,
Nay.
Commissioner Henderson,
Yes.
Chairperson Stevens,
Nay.
Commissioner Corona,
Yes.
Motion fails due to the tie vote.
So do we move on to the next resolution, or is the item, I'm just asking for some,
I mean, you can
suggestion
do
for how to
either, but
proceed.
I would suggest finishing the first one if there was going to be a motion to bring it back.
okay, So, any discussion, clarification questions about bringing it back with some further information on the density calculations? Or does somebody want to make another second motion so we can move forward?
I'd like to, Madam Chair, make a motion that we bring this back with further clarification regarding the current definition of density and the calculations, allowable calculations based on our current definition, similar to the first motion that was adopted.
Okay.
Different kind of, the same intention, but probably different verbiage there.
Okay, so can you, can you just state how that would read for purposes of just specificity for this meeting, and so that we know what we're either seconding or voting on?
Sure. So I have a motion from Commissioner Huboy to bring this item back to a future meeting with further clarification of the density as it relates to current allowances in our code.
Very good, Eva. Yes, exactly how
Okay, so do I have a second?
that's how I intended it.
I'll go ahead and second the motion. So can we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Huboy,
Yes.
Commissioner Henderson, Chairperson Stevens,
Yes.
Commissioner Corona.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. That resolution passes. That motion passes, and we will work on including that on the special hearing as well, I guess, special meeting as well.
Okay. And then I suppose we should have possibly clarified, so we might need another motion regarding the conditional use permit.
Yes, yes. So the second item, the second staff recommendation needs to be considered.
And so since we're going to be doing the special, including this in the special meeting, then should we then consider possibly making that part of the motion as well? That this the second resolution be considered in the special meeting, or do we do that? We just make the motion on the resolution?
Yeah, I would suggest doing it separately just for clarity,
Okay,
just like you did the first one.
okay.
Excuse me, but item 1 also it was a tentative map and a conditional use permit. And we made the motion to,
I think they got combined.
I
Were they
think they
combined?
did get combined in the
Okay.
first motion by Commissioner Corona. It was a motion to adopt a resolution for the tentative map and the CUP. So
I guess I wasn't clear on my motion
yeah.
regarding
Sorry
item
about
number
that. I
2.
could have.
I'd like to, well, we've already had a,
No, well, I think you can just make a motion on the second resolution in terms
Okay.
of like adding that to,
I'd like to add that conditional use permit on the same,
Okay. We'll put on the record that there's
same statement
a
on the first
motion
motion.
to do the exact same thing for the CUP
Okay.
by
Yes.
Commissioner Huboy.
Yes,
okay. And
that's
then
my motion.
I will second that.
Commissioner
And then
Huboy,
let's have a roll call vote.
Commissioner Huboy,
Yes.
Commissioner Henderson,
Yes.
Chairperson Stevens,
Yes.
Commissioner Corona.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. So we're going to move on to item 3. Let me just check in with all of you. Does anyone need a break, or can we just proceed forward? Okay, I think we're good, right? We're going to just move forward. So item 3.
Before the staff report, I need to disclose that in addition to the letter from LAFCO that was sent, I also received an email from Ann Hall that gave a narrative on the history of this item.
I have the same disclosure.
Okay, so do I, and I also forwarded that to the staff at planning and asked that they comment on that today too, so that be made public. Did you want to disclose? Did you? I also received the same. Okay, so that's just for like full disclosure that we've had outside communications with a person who has interest in this item. So let me go ahead and read the item. So we are on item number 3, pre-zone 2021-2, Ted Intravia, and I hope I pronounced that right. The applicant is requesting to rezone for future annexation 3 parcels totaling approximately 3.10 acres into the low-density residential performance overlay zoning district.
Madam Chair, I apologize on this item. Also, I need to disclose that it was on June 21st, I did have a discussion with Ted in my office for information only regarding this item.
The applicant.
Yes,
Okay.
with the applicant.
Okay. Okay, so let me just finish reading this. So the parcels are located south of Hillcrest Road, west of Los Altos Drive, and east of Trinity Drive, and north of El Dorado Drive, further identified as San Benito County Assessor, parcel number 020-460-035 and 020-460-036 and 020-120-064, CEQA categorically exempt. So can we get a staff report on this?
Yes, thank you, Chairperson Stevens. This item, as mentioned, is a request to approve the pre-zone for future annexation of 3.10 acres of land, a total of 3 parcels. And these parcels are proposed to be annexed into the low-density residential performance overlay, or the R1 LPZ. I just noticed a typo, so the R1 LPZ, low-density residential performance overlay zoning district. The properties are south of Hillcrest Road, east of Trinity Drive, west of Los Altos Drive, and north of El Dorado and Cobblestone Court. The properties are located within the City of Hollister sphere of influence, as well as our general plan planning area in the current 2005 to 2023 general plan. And they are contiguous with the city limits, as you can see on your screen. The city limits are the red line, and the project site is the yellow area. They are contiguous to the city limits on the western boundary of 2 of the APNs, and the third is contiguous to those. So it does share a boundary with the city. The City Council did authorize the initiation of the application for these 3 properties for the pre-zoning at its regular meeting of June 21st, 2021 via Resolution 2021-124. And this slide here kind of outlines the annexation process relatively simply. The initial process is to file an application for pre-zoning and annexation, and it's actually an application for the initiation of that process. And then the City Council would approve the initiation, so allowing that applicant to submit an application, which is again what happened on June 21st of last year. And then the applicant would come back with the full application for the pre-zone, and we would do any environmental review as necessary. And then we are here at step 4, which is a planning commission recommendation on the pre-zone to the City Council. After this meeting tonight, the staff will take an ordinance with the Planning Commission's recommendation for the consideration of the council at a first reading, and then there will be a second reading of that ordinance. Typically at the same meeting as the ordinance, the city staff will take a resolution for both an annexation agreement as well as the LAFCO application. So the City Council will adopt a resolution allowing us to submit the application on the applicant's behalf to LAFCO. And then LAFCO will be the ultimate authority. They are the local agency formation commission, and they are the ultimate authority on approving the boundary changes. And then the LAFCO, if approved, will file a certificate of completion, which makes the annexation take effect, and they file fees and the annexation with the State Board of Equalization. And that it would be how the property would actually be annexed. It's important to note on this particular current application, the application is for the 3 properties proposed in red. for 3.10 acres. At the June 21st, 2021 City Council meeting, where the initiation of the pre-zone for the project was considered, staff's recommendation to the City Council was to include the blue proposed boundary in addition to the subject parcels. This limit goes all the way to Hillcrest Road and then extends straight up from the current city limits at the back of Cobblestone Court. And this is staff's recommended boundary to the City Council. However, and the reason that we're here tonight is that the council did adopt a resolution authorizing the initiation of pre-zone as proposed for the 3 properties. Staff would still recommend the inclusion of these additional parcels because we believe it would make a more logical city limit boundary line, and as well as not create a future potential island. It would create a peninsula of county properties, but it would not fully enclose the properties, but it has the potential to create an island. There are several parcels in this area which are currently utilizing a city sewer line on Los Altos Drive. So the city does provide out of jurisdiction services in this area, as well as the inclusion of these parcels would potentially provide the benefit to the future parcel or to the unincorporated area. They would be more easily able to access this sewer line and get off of septic if septics were to fail, or if that was just their desire to get onto septic. The environmental analysis of the current proposal, however, for the 3 parcels, we are considering this infill development. This area is identified in our general plan as a priority infill area. It is within our sphere, and both staff's recommended boundary as well as the applicant's proposal is has no potential for environmental detriment or habitat, and it is all identified as infill in our general plan. Staff, to continue with our recommended boundary, we believe that the public interest would be best served by the commission recommending to the council a larger boundary, so an amendment to this application. And the public in this area, again, as stated, they'd be able to benefit from the annexation of their parcels of land. I think there's some potential concern about, taxes increasing or anything like that. Staff is not seeing any particular reason why that would be a concern. We have offered, as well as LAFCO staff have offered, to host community meetings if this boundary were to be changed, so we could discuss the annexation with these members of the public alongside the applicant to help them better understand what it would mean to be annexed. There is no vote into a community facilities district or anything like that with the annexation. The applicant's parcels, we would recommend a annexation agreement, particularly with these 3 property owners, as this is their initiation. However, if there were ever proposed future development, that would be when the city planning department and the planning commission could recommend conditions to do things like community facilities districts or anything like that. As these parcels are currently developed with single family homes or undeveloped, there would be no annexation or into further taxing districts, but it would provide contiguity with city streets, the opportunity to open Los Altos Drive. It's currently closed about here. It might be here at Cobblestone Court, or it might be down here just a little bit lower. But one of our DRC recommendations from our environment or our emergency services personnel was to open that. If we did a larger annexation boundary, these roads would become the city's roads, and that would open up the opportunity to remove that barricade to provide better services to these parcels. And we would also be able to provide them city services like police services as well, instead of being on the sheriff. And they're essentially the city being so close and already being semi-urban development. So staff does recommend that the Planning Commission adopt a resolution with recommendations to the City Council to deny the application as proposed. However, we would also recommend that the Planning Commission recommend to the City Council to direct the applicant to modify this application proposal to include the additional unincorporated boundaries for the reasons that we have discussed. I'm hopefully trying to keep it short and simple, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Thank you for that report. Questions from my fellow commissioners or staff?
Yes.
Commissioner Henderson?
Yeah, I have a lot of questions.
Sure.
So if you could go back to the map.
Sure.
So, is it the topmost one in red? Is that the village market?
No, the village market is the one directly to the east of that. So as I
Okay.
understand, that is 1330. This is an existing residence, and there's also an existing residence on this particular parcel. This parcel is vacant.
Okay. Now, my understanding was there's two parcels that the applicant owns. Is it the bottom two?
So there are two applicants, and I think there's one part in our staff report. I think in the resolution it's correct, but in the staff report it only has the one. Mr. Ted Intrevia owns these two larger parcels, and I believe Mr. Ron Collar owns this parcel.
Okay.
But there are two am I wrong on that? Oh. This one? Okay, so Mr. Ron Collar owns this particular property, and then Mr. Ted Intrevia owns these two particular properties.
Okay. So one of them was originally, my understanding, there was two properties involved, but then a third one is brought in because that's the one that had the sewer. Am I understanding that right?
That I actually don't know the answer. I know that there are sewer services to several, maybe about 10 parcels in this larger area. I believe 80, so possibly Mr. Ron Collar's has sewer service, but I'm not positive on that.
So I'm wondering if we can just like not entertain comments from the audience until the public comments, and then at that time we can welcome him to the podium, and then commissioners can ask questions. I just feel uncomfortable with this back and forth exchange. I think I'd rather just keep it here. Then when we get to public comment, we can clarify some of those questions. So if Commissioner Henderson, some of your questions are not answered, we'll allow some time during that public comment. Is it? So can we just do that? Thank you.
Okay. So continuing, could you go back to the step-by-step process slide?
Sure.
Okay. So LAFCO is, the 7th and 8th steps. So I'm just trying to understand this. So does LAFCO have the final say in all of this?
Yes. So ultimately, what happens is that the city makes a recommendation of a boundary that we propose to annex into our corporate city limits. That recommendation comes directly from the city council, but your role as the planning commission in this process is to make a recommendation to the city council on this item. And then the LAFCO takes strong consideration of the city or the jurisdiction's recommendations on their own boundaries. One major reason for that is that if the city were to initiate, or the county or the LAFCO itself to initiate an annexation process, they would have to bear the burden of preparing any environmental documents. And so typically that's something that's initiated by a development or a property owner individually. But technically the LAFCO could propose a different boundary and they could require further review, or the city could initiate a process themselves. But ultimately it is LAFCO typically acts on a recommendation from a jurisdiction.
Okay. I still have more questions. Okay.
Because I had a question regarding that.
Oh, well,
After
if-
Kevin
if-
is finished.
Well, if it's the same topic, you can go ahead and get your question answered.
If going back to step 2, when the city council approved the initiation for the annexation, did they specifically say that they were in favor for these 3 parcels? And what was their commentary on those, 29 other parcels?
Yes, so the city council, The city of Hollister is kind of a quote unquote like gatekeeper on pre-zones, rezones, and general plan amendments in particular, and those do require the initiation approval by the city council. So essentially the applicant and city staff took this item before the city council to even allow them to submit an application for pre-zone. And the city council did move forward with the authorization for just the 3 parcels. It was related to environmental analysis costs. That is one thing that staff would have to take a look at and see if there's any exemptions for that, or if we need to do something like a minor initial study to state that there's, a negative declaration.
Right.
I'm not a CEQA expert, so I can't make a determination, but I don't think, because this is already kind of urban, it's probably unlikely that there's a significant impact, but we would have to look into that.
When the staff made the recommendation to extend this boundary to include these other parcels, was that presented at that step 2 process when the city council approved the initiation?
Yes, this boundary was our recommendation to the city council.
And
at
what
that
was
time.
their response to that?
Their response was to authorize the initiation against staff's recommendation.
So they were against the staff recommendation during that meeting?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So just wanted to get that clarification. That was my question, thanks.
Yeah, I watched both those city council meetings, just try to understand this better. So I'm trying to understand if the city council, you make a recommendation to city council, and then they decide a different way, then why is it coming back to us again? Or why is your recommendation still continuing, up the chain, if you will?
Yeah, so staff's recommendation is still with regard to kind of logical boundaries, the lack of connectivity to city streets. We are, however, it is our duty as staff, and we understand the city council's authorization to initiate the pre-zone of this application. And so it is the applicants, they are perfectly able to submit the application for pre-zone. Staff has still analyzed the application for pre-zone given the additional information that's required as part of that application after the initiation is approved. They have the plan for services and everything that they've provided. Staff's recommendation would still be a larger boundary, especially because of the lack of contiguity between the access to these parcels on Los Altos. We would still recommend consideration for a larger boundary, despite the application being submitted and reviewed. That's still our development review committee's recommendation.
Okay. What is the difference in cost as far as getting a CEQA review of 3 lots versus, or 3 acres versus 15 acres?
So I don't have an estimate on the initial study, and there was an estimate quite a few years ago. I want to say it was like 20,000 or so for the initial study by a consulting firm that we haven't used. It's potentially something we have more planning staff on board at this time. In the past, the city, before my time, but they were able to do initial studies and minimal CEQA in-house. It's potentially something that we're able to do, but it really would be a review at the time that we receive that proposal. So I can't provide you an exact cost.
Okay. That's all I can think of right now. I might have more questions, but for now.
So I kind of had like a similar question about that. So I think this may or may not have been Commissioner Henderson's question, but I think this is what his question was. Like, what is the difference? And so even if you are not able to provide an exact, are you able to just ballpark it so that we have sort of an idea of what we're talking about, the difference in costs?
So I think that the in-house cost is around like 8,000 to 10,000, I think, is our current fee schedule, but it's not something I've utilized, so I don't know off the top of my head. And then a consultant's cost, we had one, but that was to prepare a mitigated negative declaration, if I do recall. which might not be completely necessary. I think it was around 20,000 several years ago.
Okay. Okay, at least that gives us an idea.
Sure.
We know that that's not exact, but it gives us an idea.
Yeah.
Okay. So I had a question, but I'm going to check with Commissioner Corona first. Do you have any questions or comments? Okay. So my question is, I just want a clarification on this concern about creating an island or peninsula idea. So I'm not sure if I'm misunderstanding or misreading the map, but is there currently in that location already an island created, and then this would just kind of cut into that island? And if not, if I'm like misunderstanding, can you clarify that? Can you tell me, like, based on that, so we have the blue, we have the little pinkish color in the middle, which is what we're considering today, and then we have all the yellow in the outside. So the yellow currently is city, is that right?
Okay, so this pink line is
Okay.
our current city limit.
Okay.
So it's running along here, the edge of
Okay.
this blue boundary, and then it actually runs down here. And going off the screen to the south, this area is what I would consider and what is considered a peninsula. You can see that the city's limit continues this way. It kind of continues over here. So in this area where the project is, there currently, I wouldn't consider this area to have a peninsula. It definitely doesn't have an island. So what would be considered an island is fully enclosed. So imagine, for example, if the current project proposal and then say these particular parcels here on the east side of Los Altos were to be annexed, that would leave this area, El Dorado Drive, and perhaps this parcel as an island. An island would be fully enclosed, unincorporated area by the city limits.
Okay.
So the concern with this is the creation of a peninsula, which could potentially become a proposal for an island if, say, these parcels wanted to connect to the city sewer, and then under our current lands, you would potentially create a place where it would be easy to form an island.
Sure.
And islands are difficult to incorporate. We have a few islands in the city limits now, and under current LAFCO law, as I understand, it's actually illegal to create islands. Peninsulas are a little bit of a different story, but peninsulas could become islands. And this
Okay.
boundary, just in general, is not the cleanest boundary.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think that's really clear, but I just think that I wanted to get clarification about the concern, and the concern is for future proposals that could create that, and it's not something that we're considering tonight. I just wanted to be like just really clear about that, and anyway, that's it. That was my question around that. I just wanted clarification for all of us. Any other questions for staff? If not, I'm going.
I do.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry,
Sorry.
Commissioner Henderson.
No
go ahead.
problem. How many? So in the proposed boundary, the blue. How much of that is already developed?
The vast majority of it is already developed. I believe I have so the project site is one of the largest undeveloped, and then we also have a bit of undeveloped land here. However, a lot of this area on the east side of Los Altos is actually in the flood zone. This is near where the river runs. So otherwise, all of this is developed with kind of rural residential estate, low density type county development, and quite a few, I would say about 10, I believe it's kind of this area east of Los Altos is actually on city services, on the city sewer. Not all of it. I don't believe any of the El Dorado Drive area is, but all of these parcels are developed. There's a small house here. These parcels here on Hillcrest and the north side of Los Altos are developed. So there really wouldn't be much potential for redevelopment or further development of this area, although it, I suppose, would be possible that someone could develop some of these parcels. But the project site itself is one of the most eligible for development.
Anything else?
Yeah. So so the county, the developments that are in the county, they're using septic? Is that correct?
Yes, so with
Okay.
the exception of about 10, again, these parcels here on the lower east side of Los Altos that are still in the unincorporated area, those are on city sewer, but the rest are on septic. And
Okay.
because they're in our sphere of influence and under the MOU that exists between the city, county, Sunny Slope County Water District, and the Regional Water Board, if their septics were to fail, they would have to connect to the city sewer. And while there are services in Los Altos Drive, that would require them to go through this entire annexation process as well individually, each if their or if their septic systems were to fail, in order for them to connect to the sewer. That's another reason for our recommendation to include them in this incorporation. That way, if their septics were to fail, they'd already be within the city limits, and it would be a matter of just paying the fee and getting connected. They would already have the quote-unquote authorization to connect to our services by their annexation under this process.
Okay, so the unincorporated developments that are on city sewer, at one point they had to make an application to the city, right?
Yes. Under current standards, they also would have been under an agreement to not protest annexation. However, I am not certain if these have those agreements or not. So I can't tell you for certain if they have no protest.
Okay. So, can a, I don't know, let's say, just hypothetically, let's say that, I don't know, the decision to try to annex the whole area was made, and can someone who owns property, can they protest and just, you know, is there a protest the final say, or can it be overruled?
Yeah,
I'm just
so
trying to understand.
LAFCO has a protest process. I'm not 100% familiar with how it works, but they do have a protest process. So whatever LAFCO's boundary would be proposed, they have a process by which property owners can protest the annexation of their property as
Okay.
well.
And do we know, do we have a poll of all these property owners to know how they feel about annexation?
I don't have a poll. That would have been part of our outreach process if the council had initiated the pre-zone for all, but because we're initiating just for the property owners who would like to be annexed at this time, we didn't go through that kind of outreach process with them.
Okay. Thank you for all the answers.
And the number of outlying properties other than these three, was it 29, did I hear?
I believe there's 32 total, so that would make 29 unincorporated.
29, okay.
Or unincluded.
Thank you.
Okay, I want to move forward to public comment, but I just want to double check with everyone. Do we have any other questions for staff, or can we move forward to public comment? Okay, so let's go ahead and move forward and open the public comment section at 8:16. Thank you.
Okay. The first speaker that I have, chairperson, is Mr. Alex Siwak.
Mr. Sidewalk?
Good evening, Commissioners. I didn't hear in the disclosures that you received an email that I sent this morning. I know Chairperson Roxanne Stevens responded and said she received it. I sent it to the other three commissioners.
Thank you for that reminder. Yes, we did.
Okay.
I did receive that.
When did you send it, Alex?
About 11 o'clock this morning.
I did
To
not-
the email that's on the city's, information thing.
Mhm. I'm sorry, I didn't see it.
I received it.
Okay. Mr. Corona?
I did receive it. It's in my spam folder. So I got it.
All right. All right. So I just have a couple of points. I have no problem with this peninsula being considered for pre-zone. My big problem is the way the city council then did not require Mr. Intravia to do a CEQA analysis, but put a rider in there, an amendment from the dais that said that any other parcel, any other one of those 29 parcels would have to do a full CEQA analysis for all 32 parcels or the remaining 29. I think that's totally inconsistent, discriminatory. I'm not sure that all remaining 29 parcels were notified that this was going to happen, but they're going to be burdened with that. So any one of those 29 remaining parcels, if they want to, if their sewer goes out and they need to hook up and they need to be annexed, they're going to be saddled with, by the time you get consultants and CEQAs and everything, you're probably looking at 80 or 100,000. Then staff review, and the question then is, what's really important for a pre-zoning? I mean, right there in all the documents, is there a plan for other services provided? Do those parcels have water? Can those parcels hook up to sewer? The answer is real simple. There's a bunch of them already hooked up to sewer. There's a 12-inch line sitting in Hillcrest Road. There's Santana Ranch is pumping thousands of units into Hillcrest Road right by the frontage of those units. So I don't know what the thing is about CEQA, and what are you going to have to go through the 19, 20 paragraphs of Appendix G and look for this and look for that and whatever? It's simple. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speaker cards?
Yes, I do have another speaker card, but I apologize. I should have disclosed the written comments that we received prior to the speakers. And we did receive an email from Mr. Alex Iwak last week on Tuesday, June 14th, which has been, there's copies in the lobby, and they were also provided up front. We also received a letter from the Local Agency Formation Commission, Mr. Bill Nicholson, the executive officer, on June 21st, 2022. And then we received another email, which was referenced this morning on Thursday, June 23rd, 2022, from Mr. Alexander Siwak as well.
Okay. Thanks for that clarification.
And then for speakers, I also have Miss Ann Hall.
Good evening, Planning Commission. My name is Ann Hall. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, and I'll try and get through this quickly. But to answer some of the questions that you asked, Commissioner Henderson, the applicant originally applied for a pre-zoning initiation in 2018, and this question of the additional parcels came up then, and at that time, the estimated CEQA cost, well, let me back up. The 3 parcels that he's planning to annex are under 5 acres and would be considered an exemption to CEQA. So there would not be a CEQA cost. But if he has to bring in the other 29 parcels, then that is subject to CEQA, and he would be paying for all of it. At the time, in 2018, it was estimated that we got an estimate from the city for $52,000 to do that CEQA. I can only imagine it's gone up since then. The applicant is not interested in paying for the CEQA for all the other neighbors, and he has gone out and done a straw poll of the neighbors, and most of them are not interested in annexing at this time. So not only does he not want to pay for it, he also doesn't want to be the one responsible for bringing in people that don't want to be coming into the city right now. So the next step was to go to try to develop into the county, and I think that's where your confusion about 2 parcels came in, because Ron Culler's piece already has out-of-district service authorization from the city. He applied for that about 6 years ago and was approved. So the out-of-district request was only for 2 parcels. When that came to City Council last spring, they said, no, you need to annex. But they were also very clear they only wanted to annex the 3 parcels. So 2 months later, Mr. Intervey came back with the annexation or the initiation of pre-zoning. And again, the City Council reviewed it, said, we approve this. For the 3 parcels, we do not want the additional 29 parcels at this time.
Ann, can I just ask a question now?
No, can we let her finish her comment? And then, yeah, thank you. Yeah, let's just let her, because she has a limited time.
So
Oh,
the other issue is, let's say this whole thing was done with all these parcels, there is a protest process at LAFCO, and the people being annexed have to sign that. So if this were required and he went through this and paid for all the CEQA, it's still possible that you have to have, if 50% of the neighbors protested, it would all be for naught anyway. So that is an issue when you go to LAFCO. Now, LAFCO does have some ability to do forced annexations, and that could be LAFCO's call, but this application is just for the 3. That's all he's interested in, and it would seem, based on what the council said, that's what they're interested in. I do understand staff has to present it to you this way. That is their job. I agree with what Eva said, but you have the choice as to how you want to approve it.
Okay. And then can we just do one quick question? Because I do want to honor the time. Let's just do one quick question. Is it quick? Can we do a quick
yes.
question?
Hold on one second.
Okay.
I think she made her statement in the 3 minutes,
Yeah.
and then I think there's no problem with us asking her questions as much as
Right.
we
So-
need to.
Okay.
Now we can open the time again. I'm just curious, the city council's justification for not going beyond the 3 parcel boundary. What was their statement?
The statements generally revolved around desiring these properties. These properties are for the most part undeveloped, and I think they were looking at, the ability to develop it the way the city wants it developed, as opposed to the other properties which are already developed to a residential, rural kind of standard, and would potentially have more problems incorporating into the city with your current standards, I think was my takeaway from what they had to say.
Okay, thank you, Ann.
Any other?
Thank you, Ms. Hall.
Okay, I didn't know if you had another question.
Okay. Any other speaker cards or anybody online?
I have no other speaker cards, and I have no one online.
Okay, so I'm going to close the public comment at 8:25, and then. Do we have a speaker card from him?
I don't yet have a speaker card, but it would be up to you, Chairperson, if you'd like to
Okay, let's just
kind of retract your close.
this. Can somebody get a speaker card for him? I'm going to keep it. Let's not close it. Then let's just keep it open. Give him time to get a speaker card. I just
Go ahead.
Okay.
We
We'll
could
get
have
the
you
speaker
fill it
card
out
filled afterwards. Can you go ahead and and just remember you have a 3-minute time limit. But I will ask you to fill the speaker card when you're done, so that we have
I'm sorry,
that.
I'm not hearing you.
So that I will ask that you fill that speaker card out, just so that we have it
Oh, you bet.
right after.
No
Okay.
problem.
Thank you.
After I speak. Okay. My name's Lester Wickman. I own property at 90 El Dorado. Borders this proposed pre-zoning. I've been there for 38 years, and I'll be the first to object to being forced to be annexed, is the way it sounds to me. That I didn't even know that was a possibility tonight. I come in to get another question answered. But we live in a county for a reason, and I've lived there for 38 years, and you've grown around us, and I would like to leave it that way. So I'll be the first one to object to being annexed into it. If that happened, I would expect that's your call. Then you should, being city, should stand the cost of connecting us to the services and not putting that burden on us as homeowners. We're getting by just fine the way we are. The questions I came up with before this came up tonight, it was a surprise to me. You've been talking about the density thing, and I apologize for my ignorance, but what is the definition of low-density residential performance overlay? It sounds like some lawyer wrote this. I'm a regular citizen. I don't understand your lingo. I'll just hit you with my other questions, and then we can go from there. I was wondering, are they proposing 1-story or 2-story homes on this pre-zoning? How close to the property lines are you allowing that? Because this takes privacy out of our yards when you start building 2-story homes next to our properties. So I just was kind of taken by surprise tonight by all of a sudden you're annexing or talking about annexing 29 or 30 some properties into the city that there's no prior, we got no prior notice that you were even thinking that. That's all news to me tonight. And I'll be the first to object that not happen. I can, after 38 years, I can rally a lot of neighbors to object along with me. So that's a big concern. It's be very expensive for having to connect all these services. I mean, you know, the sewers will all eventually fail. That's a common, we all know that. It only lasts a certain number of years. So it's coming, but proper notice would have been appreciated. I had a run-in with the development of Hillcrest when they decided to come in and tear down my fence without proper notice. We lost 2 dogs on account of it. I've dealt with them and put them on notice. So if this happens and you're going to be removing our fences or replacing them, I would appreciate proper notice. The other question I'd like to have on this pre-zoning, I don't know about your zonings, R1s or whatever, but do they allow outbuildings? Is that something else that we're going to have to look at or consider? Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry, but I cannot hear you.
Sorry, we'll be able to respond during our discussion. Okay, so,
You'll be
but your time
responding
is
to
up.
me? To
We'll
us,
discuss
or-
just in general the concerns that came up.
I see.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Question right now?
I'm sorry.
Is it okay to ask him a question right now? So I'm just wondering, you object to annexation. Can you maybe give just maybe 1 or 2 reasons why you object? I heard maybe it was cost, but I just want to make sure I
The cost of all
understand.
the connections of that you're, you know, someone just say $80,000 to $100,000 to connect to the city sewer. That's outrageous.
Okay,
You
cost
know,
of
that's
connection,
you know,
okay.
how would I sell my property to someone else,
Okay.
knowing that they're going to be under that kind of a burden?
All right.
You know, the extra city taxes that you would put on us, that we're not paying city taxes because we're not city property. We moved into a county there 38 years ago so that we weren't in the city. I actually own other properties in the city, so I deal with that too. I'm not just, that's not my only property. I have properties in the cities too, and I know how that works. But this one is a county property, always has been. I lived there for 38 years, and I object to being, you know, it's not a homeowners association. I object to being told what I can and can't do on my own property. I fought for this country, for our freedom, and I would like to be able to benefit by it.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Wickman.
you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Oh, card. I'll fill that out and give
Thank
that back to you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Okay, are there any other speakers?
I have no other speaker cards, and we have no one online in the audience.
Oh.
Oh, yes, sorry, I didn't see this. It's head and trivia.
Okay. Mr. Intruvia.
Hi, Commissioners. Basically, this has been a pretty short story. I came in with the first request just to split my mother's property into 2 pieces. That was it. That's all I asked for. So I went to the city of Hollister and they said, no problem, we can do it. You need to go to LAPCO. We'll check. So anyhow, it comes out, the LAPCO says, no, you need another piece of property to go in there. So the only available property, I talked to people around me that didn't want to go in because of annexation. And I understand. I don't want to bring somebody in that doesn't need to be in there. I don't want to have a development that has to have somebody else be, brought in with me. So I went through the process and I got another piece of property that was vacant behind me. So I brought that back to the commission, LAPCO, and LAPCO says, oh, that's fine, but then, so I set up a little plan, and the little plan came into the development of 7 lots, basically. So LAPCO says, no, that's not what we said. We said 2 other properties. Well, I said, I got 2 other properties. So they wouldn't do it, basically. So it left me with no choice other than the fact that, they would want me to bring in 29 more, and I won't do that. That's not fair to these people to bring them in when they don't want to come in. Why should I be the one that has to bring them into to the city? And I just refuse to do it. I'm sorry. That's not how it's supposed to be done. So that's what it was, a simple project that turned into a nightmare, basically. So, if you have any questions, I'd like to answer them. Okay, you're welcome.
Okay, any other questions? I'm sorry, any other speaker cards?
Okay. I don't believe I have any more speaker cards.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I am going to close the public comment section now at 8:33. And then check in with my fellow commissioners. Any further discussion, questions, comments?
Okay.
Go ahead, Kevin, then I'll go after you.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Thanks.
so let's, Commissioner Henderson, go ahead.
Thank you. So the cost of connection to the city was brought up. So can we get clarification on what it would cost somebody who is currently on septic and they want to connect to the city sewer? What is involved? What's the cost to them?
So I'll answer this in two parts because they're relevant to this project and staff's recommendation as well. So for a property that is on septic within the city limits, the cost of connection to sewer would be our sewer connection and sewer treatment fees, their impact fees, and they're approximately, I would say, $15,000. I know it was brought up by the speaker tonight that this would be charged upon annexation. It would not be charged upon annexation, but it would be that you would be within the city limits if this boundary was amended, and that would be the only charge. And then to go to my second part of this answer, the cost to connect to sewer for a current property that is within the county that is on septic, that is then no longer permitted to get a new septic if their septic system fails. The city's policy right now is to require annexation of the properties if they're within our sphere of influence. And so the cost of that process would be the initiation application fee, which is several $1,000s, and then the pre-zone application for annexation fee itself, which is about $20,000, as Mr. Intravia has pointed out, I believe, in his communications with us. And they would be going through this process to the commission, well, first to the council to initiate, second to the commission with the pre-zone, third to the council twice for an ordinance, and then finally to LAFCO, their application fees as well to LAFCO. So the cost would be significantly higher if someone were in the county and their septic system were to fail and they would have to connect to the city, rather than if they were already within the city limits and their septic system were to fail.
Okay, and so if someone's in the city on septic,
We have a few.
they can remain on septic if they want to.
Yes.
They can.
Yes.
but-
There's no
okay.
obligation upon annexation to convert to city sewer.
Okay, got it. And what about taxes?
So
City taxes.
as I understand, there are laws regarding the increase of taxes upon jurisdictional change. So there would be little to no change in the tax for moving from county to city for
Okay.
property.
Thank you. Commissioner Huboy, do you have questions or comments?
I do have some comments regarding this, and I think that, again, I've had some experience in San Jose where we couldn't do improvements until the property owner was an island, had to go through annexation. It was almost a forced issue. I'm not calling this a forced issue from the city's standpoint. You're not forcing this annexation, but on the regarding the applicant, it's not to be approved unless this other 29 properties go through the annexation. I think that knowing that Mr. Intravia's been working on this project since 2018, he's done everything the city council's asked him to do, to require him to, and I think you've addressed in the staff report that you would do some outreach to these other properties, but the practicality of being able to achieve this, I think, is next to nothing. It's slim or to none to achieve 29 properties to go through annexation. It's going to take who knows how long. I think it's impractical unreasonable request to the applicant to do that. So I want to hear what the other commissioners have to say, but from a practicality and a reasonability standpoint, I'm ready to make a proposal in favor of the applicant for the pre-zone.
Okay, Commissioner Corona, any questions or comments? Okay. Yeah, I am not gonna belabor the point, but I have the same sentiment, I think, as Commissioner Huboy, and the comment that Commissioner Henderson said earlier about why is it even coming back here. I kind of feel the same way. If it's already been approved, I'm not sure why it's here again. So that's it. Just whether I agree or not agree with what the City Council decided to do, it just seems like we're being asked to do something that is just, I don't know, bureaucratic red tape that I don't know is necessary. So I am concerned about the recommendation for denial. And so anyway, that's my opinion about this. So I'm gonna just check in with my fellow commissioners. Is anybody ready to make a motion? I think it sounds like we're maybe at that point where we're ready to entertain a motion.
Luke, did you have any comments? I'm ready to make a motion, Madam Chair. I'd like to make a motion to approve pre-zone 2021-2 in favor of the applicant. Is there any other?
Tonight, we'd be looking for a recommendation to the council.
And to recommend that, to forward it to the City Council. And to not include the request from staff to annex the adjoining properties, just proceed with the 3 parcels as originally directed by City Council.
Do you have a second?
Made that clear?
Yes.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I will second that.
Okay. So should we do a roll call vote?
Commissioner Huboy,
Yes.
Commissioner Henderson,
Yes.
Chairperson Stevens,
Yes.
Commissioner Corona.
Yes.
Thank you.
So are we done with that item, or do we need to do anything else with that item?
I don't
Motion
believe-
carries.
Yeah, the motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. The applicant, thank you for your patience with the city, all the city business. So we're going to move on to the final item, and I thank you to that applicant for your patience as we're moving forward in this this agenda that's become longer than we had anticipated. So let's hear item number 4, minor subdivision 2018-3 amendment. Applicant Alan Brookshire is requesting approval to remove the requirement to underground a power pole located in the unnamed alley behind the project, which are required as part of condition of approval 11 of Planning Commission Resolution 2018-36. The project is located at 221 Hawkins Street, south of Hawkins Street, east of San Benito Street, and west of East Street in the downtown mixed-use zoning district. The property is further identified as San Benito County Assessment Parcel Number 056-091-002, CEQA categorically exempt. So can we get a staff report, please?
Yes, thank you, Chairperson Stevens. This application is for an amendment to minor subdivision 2018-3. For a brief history on the project approvals at this site, on September 27, 2018, the Planning Commission adopted PC Resolution 2018-36, as well as PC Resolution 2018-37, approving minor subdivision 2018-3 and site and architectural review 2018-7, respectively. And then there was also a requirement as part of that approval to get a conditional use permit for an amendment to or to allow a reduction of open space requirements for this particular project, particularly affiliated with the site and architectural review and the vertical improvements on the site. And so that conditional use permit 2018-10 was approved on December 20th of 2018 via PC Resolution 2018-51. And then on September 24th of 2020, there was a letter of extension written by the previous Development Services Director to extend the minor subdivision application 2018-3 to September 27th of 2022. The original project approval was for the subdivision of a parcel located at 221 Hawkins Street in a 3-lot subdivision. And then the site and architectural review approved 2 single-family attached units which faced Hawkins Street, and then 1 single-family detached unit which faced an unnamed alley to the south of the project. The approvals did expire. We have talked with both our current city attorney as well as a land use attorney that we have on staff to confirm that the letter written for the extension of the subdivision, because it didn't reference the site and architectural review or the conditional use permit, unfortunately it was determined that those could not be considered as part of this amendment request as they were not extended by that letter. However, the subdivision was determined to be live and valid, and so tonight there is a request to amend one of the conditions on that application. Condition number 11 was regarding the road improvements and the standard road improvements, as well as improvements required for that unnamed alley to the south of the project. In particular, the requirement was to underground an existing overhead utility pole located in that alley. The applicant is requesting to amend this condition to remove this undergrounding utility pole requirement. Currently, the alley is not utilized as a through access right-of-way. It is fenced off towards the west on San Benito Street. The eastern third of the alley, and this screen kind of highlights where the utility pole is. I have another photo as well of the project site, and then this is the rear of the property with this utility pole located in the alley. Because the site is, this section of the alley closest to San Benito Street is currently fenced off, so this alley isn't used as a through access. However, this eastern third behind the Big Sale store is utilized as a one-way through access to East Street. Part of the approval of the 221 Hawkins Street project was to open this alley because it is a one-way access for the provided third lot on the south side of the project site. And the alley is only 12 feet wide, and it's one way from San Benito Street to East Street. So it does need to be reopened as part of the project approval to provide vehicular access to this project. As mentioned, the utility pole, however, is located within the alley, and it does serve surrounding properties, but it creates a limitation on the actual vehicle passage width. Because it's not open, it's not currently a problem. But if it was open, there's only about 9.5 feet of clearance for any vehicle going through this alley, where the alley is currently the minimum requirement by the California Code of Regulations of 12 feet. So with the condition as originally around this utility pole, there was no issues. This is a perfectly acceptable 12-foot wide right-of-way. The project was also conditioned to improve the alley to city standards, and it would provide adequate access to and from this property. However, eliminating the right or the requirement for the undergrounding, it would reduce the accessible width of the alley below those minimum width requirements required by the California Code of Regulations. Staff did talk to the applicant about seeing if there was any PG&E requirements or concerns or considerations for keeping and or removing the pole. However, we haven't gotten any statements from PG&E about this pole to provide to the Planning Commission for extra consideration. Staff is concerned with the safety of the passage through this alley if it were to be opened, because it is only 9.5 feet and it doesn't provide that 12-foot minimum clearance for a one-way travel lane. So we have determined that it is potentially inconsistent with Health and Safety Policy HS 1.1, which states that the city shall permit development only in those areas where potential danger to the health, safety, welfare of the residents of the community can be adequately mitigated, including development which would be subject to severe flood damage, geological hazard due to the location and or design. Development should also be prohibited where emergency services, including fire protection, cannot be provided. As originally approved, staff believes that the undergrounding of this pole would adequately meet this health and safety policy. However, the requested amendment tonight, we believe it would provide a significant safety risk for pedestrians, and the public who's using this public right-of-way, as well as the potential future tenant of any development on this site. And we believe that the Planning Commission should consider that it should remain at 12 feet wide. We are also concerned by the CEQA analysis. Again, as originally approved, we are fully in support that this qualifies for an exemption from CEQA. However, because our general plan safety element does require consideration of the public safety for future development, this would be inconsistent with our general plan, and we would need to reconsider this exemption under the CEQA. So staff recommends tonight that the Planning Commission adopt a resolution denying the amendment request to Planning Commission Resolution 2018-36 to remove the requirement to underground the utility pole located in the unnamed alley that was required as part of the original conditions of approval, minor subdivision 2018-3, based on the findings contained in the draft resolution. And this would uphold the original approval, which is set to expire later this year.
Thank you. Okay, so any questions or comments for staff?
I have a question.
Commissioner Henderson?
So do we know why this didn't come up originally as far as, I guess, I don't know the right word. I would say protesting the requirement to underground. Why didn't this come up before? I'm curious.
I can't speak for the applicant. I'm sure that
Okay.
he would speak tonight, but I know that the reason that it has come up is definitely due to cost. It is definitely a costly project.
Okay, and do we know the cost?
I don't,
Okay.
but I know that it's significant, and I also know that it would require work within existing developed yards. But I know it's a concern of staff's, just the limited right of way.
Do you, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Kevin,
just
did you finish?
just finished.
I'm sorry.
It would affect neighbors then. Like the neighbor, it would
It
have
would.
to.
It
PG&E would have to work with the neighbors to get the utilities to them as well.
Yes.
Okay, probably to the south. The neighbors to the south. of
Neighbors to
there.
the south.
Okay, thank you.
Eva, do you have any idea what the linear feet of trenching would be involved in this?
I truly don't, Commissioner Huboy.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Carmona, any questions? Okay, I don't have any questions either. Let's go ahead and open the public comment at 8:52.
I have no speaker cards. Ann. Okay. Oh, they were on. I'm sorry, Ann. Ann Hall.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Ann Hall here on behalf of the applicant. And a couple things. You asked why this was not specifically considered originally when the project was in for the tentative map. The condition that was applied to the project was the generic condition, meaning you have to underground any poles at the discretion of the city engineer as required by the project. This pole is technically not on the frontage of this property. It's actually slightly in front of the property next door. So usually you have to always do your frontage. It didn't really occur to us at the time. We have, in the plans we have submitted and have been approved up to this point, or reviewed up to this point, we are undergrounding the ones on Hawkins in front, but that we had not shown the alley one because we didn't consider it to be on our frontage. When that came up and we looked into it, that pole in the alley does connect to 5 other homes through the backyard, meaning if they had to underground it, while PG&E probably has a prescriptive easement for the wires to hang where they are, I'm sure they do not have an easement to go through people's backyards. So that would be 5 homes all of a sudden they're going to be bringing in from East Street and San Benito Street. It'd be a very expensive pole. Speaking of PG&E, I did get a letter from them literally at 5:20 this afternoon, which says there are poles in the city right away. I mean, I'll provide you the whole letter, but that's essentially all it says. They made it clear when I talked to them they were not going to go out on any limbs. It was a fight to get them to send this, which really only just acknowledges there's a pole. So in regard to health and safety issues, this pole reduces the alley. It's been reducing the alley for probably 40 years. It does go to the back of this property. There's plenty of, I live on a house with an alley. It's a 20-foot alley. It has poles in it. I can tell you that alley is not 20 feet wide. This alley is only 12. The fire department has said they will not go down here because it does not meet their requirements. So I understand there's some concern, but this is ultimately part of a bigger project. And I want to get this in really quick. This project was approved in 2018. Part of the condition was that the alley be cleared. That alley has still not been cleared. We've not been able to move forward with our project, mostly having to do with the fact that the alley has not been cleared. So, and we are still, there are many things unconfirmed about this project. We are supposed to be having a meeting. I would ask tonight, if you do not feel you can support approval of this amendment, you continue this amendment. We have agreed with the city to have a meeting to address some of the other issues on this project. And it might be better to be considered all as part of that overall project. Issues mostly having to do with the alley and the fact that it's still not cleared 4 years later. Any questions for me?
And do you have any idea what the cost might be, overall cost to achieve this undergrounding
a pole,
requirement?
when we estimate, like on a county road, out in the open, undergrounding a pole is from 20 to 40,000, depending on the transformer, if it has a transformer or not.
Mm-hmm.
This one I would estimate would be more because you're going to, the way the houses are served, they're not going to repeat. It would probably have to become, like I said, go down East Street and come in from the front. All their panels are in the back. It would be going through people's private property. It would be very expensive. You know, I would say easily $80,000 to $100,000 would be a starting point.
I didn't hear you very well when you said you got a letter from PG&E and it said something about they have poles. I didn't quite catch everything.
Right. I got it this afternoon, and I'm going to provide it to Eva. I didn't even have time, but it said, thank you for submitting our site plan. The 2 poles identified in the alley are within the City of Hollister public right-of-way, shown on the assessor's maps attached. Attaches a copy of the assessor's maps for your convenience. So essentially they said, yes, there's 2 poles, and they're in the public right-of-way. So, but I'm happy to provide this to Eva for the record.
And one other question. So to summarize your statement about, I was hearing that you were suggesting that we put this off because there's other issues that you're going to be meeting with the city regarding? City
Yes.
engineering?
Yes. Yeah, there are larger issues, as Eva mentioned. The site and architectural and the CUP have expired. Mm-hmm. There is still no resolution to the alley, which we have no control over. This is, for the project to go forward, this is still a question we will need resolved. But what I don't want you to do is deny this tonight. If you don't feel you can support it, I'd rather it be continued and included in the larger discussion. That is my request.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Do we have any other speakers?
Yes, Alan Brookshire.
Okay.
I'm Alan Brookshire. I'm the owner at 221 Hawkins. I just have a quick question. If the alley is supposed to be cleared, like we've been talking about, how can the alley be cleared and have one-way traffic from San Benito Street to East Street? And that's okay, but it's not okay for it to be a driveway and to serve that back unit on my project. So the alley is going to be reopened, correct? You told me that last week. You told me you were in cahoots with code enforcement and you're getting the alley reopened.
Excuse me.
So the alley is going to reopen.
Excuse me, sir. Can I just ask staff to do its time? Okay, go ahead.
So the alley is going to be reopened, and it's going to run from San Benito Street east to East Street. Is that correct?
The public comment is intended to.
Okay, well, I mean, that's what I've been told. And that's what you told me last week. Okay, so why?
So just
why,
express your concern and your comments, and then we'll respond after.
How can the alley be opened up and as an alley, but it can't be used for a driveway for my project? Is that a valid question?
I think that if you express your concerns, and we can comment on your concerns
Okay.
during the discussion.
Okay. Well, that's my comment.
Thank you. Do we have any other speaker cards or anybody online?
Let me just double check. I don't have any other doubles. No, we are good.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to close the comment section at 8:59, and then I will ask fellow commissioners, do you have any further comments, questions, clarifications? Is there an action that you'd like to take?
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Hubway?
My comment is that I'm almost willing to classify this task of undergrounding these service wires as almost being technically infeasible. I don't see how it can be accomplished through adjoining properties. And also considering that this pole does not even serve the subject property, the applicant's property. I don't see that from a feasibility standpoint. I think it's technically infeasible. I don't see how it can be accomplished.
Okay.
That's the way I'm looking at this.
Other commissioners?
Yeah, I just, as a policy, it doesn't seem fair, I think, to the applicant to expect the applicant to deal with this issue because, yeah, as Commissioner Hubway pointed out, it doesn't even serve his property. This seems like a larger issue that the city needs to work with PG&E on. I don't think it's fair to put this burden on the applicant.
Okay. Okay, no comment from Commissioner Krona. Yeah, I mean, I think I have like similar sentiment. And this occurred to me after hearing from public comment that is there any other option if we aren't able to go all the way through that? And I know that not every single block area in the downtown area has alley access. Some do and some don't. I mean, it's like we've been living without the full alley access the city has been for whatever period of time. What are the other ways that these properties can be served by by whoever needs to go there? So like first responders, for example. I mean, what are other options? It does, because I agree. I mean, it seems like it doesn't matter. I think we will end up in kind of a loop of being unresolvable, if that's a word, because it just seems like it's just in a weird spot. Who's going to take responsibility? Depending on who gets the finger pointed at, you're going to need other people to be involved. It just seems like a problem that it cannot be resolved. So are there other options? I mean, I think that we've been living with it there for all this time. Will this added development really change that significantly?
I think that there's always opportunity to consider other options, whether it's different designs or potentially options where anything like a reimbursement agreement or something like that would have to be approved by the council and authorized. But I think there's definitely other things to consider. Just to the point of the difference that this development makes is that right now, as mentioned, 1/3 of the alley is closed, and then 1/3 of the alley is utilized just as one way. And you can see in this street view from Hawkins, so this is on Hawkins looking south at the property here, and then this property to the east, they utilize only this back third of the alley. So they enter their driveway here and exit out to east. So this portion of the alley currently isn't utilized at all. So the pole doesn't have any issue because no one is accessing this particular section of the alley. But I think that there's definitely opportunity to try to work something out. Staff does understand the cost burden, but we also understand that it's our representative as staff to protect the city and its residents when development comes through.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so what would you all like to do, fellow commissioners? Would somebody like to move forward with a motion? Is there further discussion needed?
I'd like to make a motion, Madam Chair.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to uphold the applicant's request on this 2018-3 amendment to minor subdivision regarding the condition of approval number 11. And I think that's about all I need to say, right? I am not to require the applicant to underground these utility wires. But also, I'd like to,
So
there was a little
let's get
caveat to
second.
that motion.
Let's entertain a second and then we'll have further discussion.
Oh, okay.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Can I
Got
have a
over exuberant there.
Can I have a second on that motion?
So that's my motion.
Okay. Can I have a second? I'll second that.
I think there may be, I don't know, I might propose a friendly amendment just because the staff report basically says if this condition if the pole remains, that it's going to trigger a CEQA review because the project will no longer be, how do you say it? Consistent with the general plan. So it seems like, maybe we need to deal with that issue as well. So I'm not sure how to word it or whatever, but do you understand my point though?
So are you saying that the motion that Commissioner Huboy just made, that we might need to consider adding something to that before actually doing the vote on it? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think we should consider maybe a friendly amendment to the motion before we vote on it.
Okay.
Because of the point I just made.
Sure. And probably what I should have asked, Eva, is like for you to read what the motion would be before I second it. So can we do that? So then we can consider whether we need that amendment that Commissioner Henderson is talking about.
So I have that Commissioner Huboy made a motion to uphold the applicant's request regarding condition of approval 11 of resolution 2018-36 to not require the undergrounding of the utility pole, with a second from Chairperson Stevens.
Okay, so why don't we I think we need to take a vote on it in that, or like ask for an amendment on the record so that we can restate the motion to include this other concern or to not include it. So I'm asking for clarification on procedure.
The CEQA, from my understanding, and Eva can correct me if I'm wrong, but the CEQA just requires more analysis. And so really, regardless of what the motion is, that's something that staff will have to do. So I don't really think that you have to speak to that.
Okay.
So I guess my concern would be an additional burden on the applicant because of the CEQA that gets triggered. So does this automatically mean that it's going to be a higher cost to applicant because it's going to require CEQA now, if this passes? If the motion passes?
Staff would have to look into it, so it would potentially be that Chairperson or Commissioner Huboy or another commissioner might need to put into the motion to have that as an added kind of condition of the approval of the resolution or approval of the request, that be considered prior to some kind of timing.
Okay, I mean, here's what I'm thinking. Just from that clarification that we just received, and because this was the original request of the applicant, right, that we take this requirement away, and basically what we're saying is, okay, we agree with you, we're going to do that. I think we should just move forward with the motion as Commissioner Huboy stated the motion to be, and as I second it. Right? Okay, so I'm going to ask for a roll call vote, and then we can move forward based on the results of the roll call vote. Okay, let's do that.
Commissioner Huboy?
Yes.
Commissioner Henderson?
Yes.
Chairperson Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Corona?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you.
Now, Madam Chair, if I may, I also want a little caveat. I want to encourage, I can understand the reason and the overall vision of undergrounding these overhead utility lines. I'd like to see it done somehow in the future. But it has to be done in a practical and a sensible manner. And I want to encourage Ann to continue meeting and discussing these issues with the city and seeing how if they can resolve these issues in a timely manner. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so let's try to finish up this agenda that we have. So, any new business?
I would just like to introduce some of our new planning and city attorney staff. Some of them have been sitting here tonight. So we have Adriana Ortiz, who's our Development Services Director, consulting with us from Four Leaf. We also have Jennifer Thompson, who's part of our new city attorney legal team from Lozano Smith. And then in the audience in the back, we have Vanessa Lopez, who's a planning technician. And then we also have Liz Gagliardi, who's our associate planner. And then in addition, we have Erica Fraser, who's working with us remotely via Four Leaf as a senior planner. And we also have Sam Fluman, who is working with us remotely as a development or planning tech as well. So they've been a really great help to Amber and myself. Amber's not here tonight, but we're happy to have them all on board and happy to have them here at one of our first planning commission meetings in a while.
Well, welcome. And it sounds like we have a full staff now. Is it
Almost.
Pretty close?
Pretty
close.
Yeah, we're working on it.
That's really nice. So welcome to all the new staff members. We're glad you're here.
Thank you.
If I might say, I know I enjoyed working so many years with Abraham Prado, and wish him success with the county.
Yes,
I'll be missing him. I've already been missing him, just joking around with him, about the Golden State Warriors.
Yes, I realize that we haven't had a commission since Abraham Prado left the city, so he actually did get a position as the assistant director of the RMA with the San Bernardino County So he's working there for the past few months. So we're sad to see him go, of course. He definitely served the city for many years and was very knowledgeable here. But we're happy to still have him semi-locally.
In the community, yeah. Yes, thank you for the acknowledgement, because it has been a while since we've met, and he was here then, and now he's not, and so we have not had the opportunity to say thank you for all the great service and for being such an easy person to and accommodating person for all of us to work with, and so he's going to be missed, but he's still in the community with the county, so I think we're going to all benefit from that. Any other new business?
I have no other new business.
Is there any old business?
I would just like to provide a brief update on the general plan update. Currently, staff is receiving chapters of the admin draft. We have almost all of them, and we are reviewing them. The plan right now is to, once kind of school gets back in session, to be ready for public comment periods and some public engagement and community engagement opportunities, having a few meetings and or activities online for people to participate in while they review the draft. And then our schedule as of right now is adoption in the spring of 2023.
Okay, great. Anything else on old business?
No, I don't believe so.
Planning department reports?
I have no reports. I suppose I don't know if those were new, old, or reports. But
Okay, probably all of the above. And planning commission reports. So any of the commissioners have anything to report? No, I don't think we do. Okay, so let's go ahead and adjourn. 9:15. Let's close this planning commission meeting at 9:15.
if we could have a motion.
Oh,
Thank
sorry.
you.
Yeah, I'm getting tired. So let's have a motion. Forgot we have to do that little procedure.
So moved.
And I'll second.
Commissioner Huboy?
Yes.
Commissioner Henderson?
Yes.
Chairperson Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Corona?
Yes.
Okay, now we will close.
Hi, thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.